my conscience. Brian James in LA, you're on college. I've been jumping on them planes like a hobby. Still moving with the pack like my partners. Shut the John on them jets cause we wildin'. But the bowl is a party on the island. Moment of silence. So good, get back to the topic. Grew up, it was me and Flocka. Grandma's and Big T, this my mama. I ain't even for the pain when my pops flipped. Knew his name, that's it, never bothered. Mom said, you the man, son, you got this. Ever since I found a way to go and pop shit. Hold up, blaze through a whole zip. Took a seat at the table of my first flip. Days in red roof for my first whip. Spent the money with the gang, never post pics. Seen a change in the game, had to coach it. Never let them take my wangs in the mold, bitch. Ever made in a month, nigga. Used to serve him at the minute, just the front, nigga. Goddamn. Had to grow up quick, I made my own rules. Had my first child, got it jumping with music. Can't really hang with nobody who losing. I thought by now that you would go and get it, but I could hardly see niggas this distant. Know you get cropped if you not in the picture. And I made that tag and went got a bag. Shots to the Henny and OG prescriptions, put rebel shit on the map. Took a leap from where I started at. Started ballin' now, I'm Chris Paul and Cass. Got him steady calling for the mold, but I'm on a roll, gotta call him back. And that's all fact.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. All carry-on items should now be stowed securely, either in an overhead bin or under the seat in front of you. All aisles, exits, and bulkhead areas should now be clear. All electronic devices should now be turned off and stowed, as they may interfere with the aircraft's navigational and communication systems. Once airborne, we'll let you know when you may use approved electronic devices, but note that some items may not be used at any time during the flight.
And a very wise daughter.
I think I'm cute. I know I'm sexy. I've got the look that drives the girls wild. I got the moves that really move them. I send chills up and down their spines. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. Let's go! I make them hot. I make them shiver. Their knees get weak.
That's why here at this
whenever
station,
I'm
we watch the
around to
programs
see
and
me
commercials your
walk.
child watches
They
carefully.
hear me talk.
He may see
I'll
bad
make
guys,
them feel
but not in the role of
like they're
heroes.
God and real. I'm just a
doesn't pay.
sexy boy.
Because your child's welfare is our
I'm
concern
not
too.
your boy
That's part of
toy.
our code. The code of the
just a
National
sexy
Association of
boy.
Broadcasters for television and
I'm
the
not
greater
your
public
boy
interest.
toy. That might flip though. Hands off the
This flat tire is a man, but when there's no man around,
I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a
when there's
sexy
no
boy.
man
I'm not your
around, Goodyear
boy
should be.
toy.
Why? Watch this.
I'm just a sexy boy.
New Goodyear Double Eagle
I'm not
carries
your
its own
boy
spare
toy.
inside. Lifeguard safety
I'm
spare.
just a sexy
The
boy.
tire in the tire.
I'm not
Keeps
your
on
boy
going.
toy.
Next time, give her a
I'm
second
just a
chance.
sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy.
Mary Ann Lynch took off at 7:45 a.m. Flew 2,949 miles. Made 3 stops.
Welcome everybody to
And most of the
another
trip still lies
edition of the
ahead.
Pocket Locker
Now there are schedules
Podcast.
to
Good to
check.
see you all
Flight
here
reports
with
to make.
me. I see
A quick
Nerdy
supper with
Rodent is
friends
in the
before turning
building.
in.
Appreciate you, Nerdy.
Next morning,
First, I'm
on
gonna
the
go
go
ahead
again at
and
6:15.
let's get
Then
out some
St.
pocket
Louis,
change.
Cincinnati. Finally, New York.
How's it going,
Glamour
Nerdy?
job.
Hope you're doing
Mary Ann
well.
has
I gotta
made
get
dozens
into
of
some
runs
nerdy
like
stuff
this. Served hundreds
today.
of hot meals. Greeted
I need
thousands
to
of new people.
work
It all
on
demands a lot of
my
charm
manuscript.
and works out to
Try
a
to
lot
get
of
my
coke.
ass published.
Does Coca-Cola
I
have the
also
taste you never get tired of?
gotta do.
Do we mean it when we say
I have a
Coke is
coding review
always
tomorrow, so
refreshing?
I'm gonna look at my
His
code for a
things go
little
better
bit,
with Coke
but not
after
too
Coke
much.
after
What's up,
Coke.
Melody
Just a slogan.
Joy? in the
Right,
house.
Miss Mary Ann Lynch,
Appreciate you,
Transworld
Melody.
Airlines Box 7144, St. Louis,
Let's
Missouri.
go ahead
She'll tell
and
you.
catch a vibe so we could go ahead and get today's program started. Let's add some points for Melody. All right, here we go. Let's play the Cheers theme. Let's do that, and then we'll get ready to go.
Dublin, and he's going to play us out. Foy, you're going to play what to finish us up?
You know what? I don't know the name of this song actually, but I know
think
the
the
song.
other one gets a
So
copyright strike for some reason.
Forward
I don't
this.
know. I gotta
Foy
go.
Vance, take it away.
Coca-Cola has the taste you never get tired of. Always refreshing. That's why things go better with Coke after Coke after Coke.
Making your way in the world today takes everything you got. Taking a break from all your show.
Actually, I'm gonna go with this one.
When you like to get away. Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name. And they're always glad you came.
Melly, I don't know what you're talking about right now. Hang on, I'm having a frame rate issue that I gotta take
In the
care of.
dull and commonplace occurrences of day-to-day living, one thing stands out as a completely unique experience.
You got no lights,
Colt
and the check is
45
in
malt
the
liquor.
mail. And your little angel on the countered by its tail. Your third fiance didn't show. Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name. And you're always glad they came. You wanna be where you can see troubles are all the same. You wanna go where everybody knows your name. Well, you get out of bed, the
In the
coffee's
dull
dead.
and commonplace
The morning isn't
occurrences
looking
of
bright.
day-to-day living,
You
one
shrink
thing
right
stands
off
out
your
as a completely
grind.
unique
Doesn't even
experience.
right.
Colt 45 malt liquor.
Your girlfriend says she's not a girl. Be glad there's one place in the world where everybody knows your name.
Believe it or not, we have over a mile of
And they're
inspectors at the
always
Volkswagen
glad you
factory.
came.
More than 7,000 men who have only one
You
job,
wanna be where
to
you
keep
can
an eye on
see
the way Volkswagens are made.
troubles are all the
And there's no
same.
nonsense about them.
You
They
wanna
reject the
go
Volkswagen
where
or part of a
everybody
Volkswagen
knows your
for little
name.
things you might never even see.
You wanna
And when
be
one of our
where
inspectors
you
says
can see
no,
troubles
no.
are all the same.
that's why you'll never find.
You wanna go where everybody knows your name.
Foy Vance. Most common word coming in by text, Foy, is goosebumps. Believe it or not, we've had that repeatedly across the whole series. If you want to see Foy Vance's
Donald Trump held his final unhinged, extreme, lunatic rally in front of a crowd of sycophants last night in Vandalia, Ohio. And there were rumors that he was going to announce his 2024 candidacy. Trump did make an announcement of a further announcement, and a lot of people highly titillated by this. Take a look at Trump's big announcement.
I'm going to be making a very big announcement on Tuesday, November 15th at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida.
Okay, so by all reasonable assessments, next Tuesday, Trump will be announcing that he is running for the Republican presidential nomination in 2024. This was a particularly disgusting rally. The energy was extra dangerous. One of the targets of Trump in the last few days has been Nancy Pelosi. And it is quite horrifying. We will get to that momentarily. Donald Trump insisting, you know, maybe he should be given back the nuclear codes.
In his socks. Nothing happened to him except a great verdict. He's got a great verdict. We go by that verdict, the socks verdict. But no, he had it in his socks. You know that, right? And others took many documents. They take them out of the White House. They took documents. I'm the only one that can't take anything. But maybe our country would be better off if I actually had the nuclear codes, JD, because our enemies would be afraid, unlike the way they are now. If I had the...
Think about what he's saying. He's saying, I am so unstable that I actually might just on a whim nuke people, that me having the codes would be a good deterrent.
Nuclear codes. Bill Clinton, don't forget, he lost the nuclear codes twice. How do you explain that to the military? I've lost the military codes. What do you... He lost the military codes twice. I didn't. They're coming after me because I'm fighting for you. That's...
Yeah. Completely unhinged. I mean, this is a man at this point so disconnected from reality and sanity that it is hard to believe. Trump then going after Nancy Pelosi. Of course, Nancy Pelosi's husband recently attacked by a right-wing.
All right, sorry about that. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't have that media source going to my monitor, so it was hidden. I couldn't even hear the commercials. I had no idea what Melody Joy was talking about. And then, of course, there was a recording incident. For some reason, OBS started recording, and that's what caused the frame rate issue because it's not fast enough to record and stream at the same time. So that's what caused the frame rate issue. I'm a bit irritated. I spent a lot of time working on these scenes and thought I went over them pretty thoroughly. I'm kind of disappointed that that scene was in there. I couldn't hear it. And then I just need to get rid of this machine. I literally just sent some request for some performance upgrades to the machine that we're trying to spec out for the new streaming and recording computer. So hopefully this machine will be replaced here soon. It is just driving me crazy. Some of the issues that I have with it that I shouldn't have, and the fact that it's just slowed down so much that it is utterly frustrating to work on, especially when I have to work on something while I'm streaming. It's just been holding me back for a really long time. Kind of tired of bitching about it because it's getting replaced, so it feels unproductive at this point. But yeah, that's what was going on. Class action suit against all machines. Literally, I'm getting rid of all the machines. Literally getting rid of all the machines in this. But yeah, let's listen to this. I'll come back on camera. I'll smoke for a little bit. Hopefully that'll get me back in a decent mood here. Let's see. Let's just do a cheers command. I'm going to have a drink. We'll watch this, and then we'll move forward with our day here. All right.
Human beings. I said, no, they're animals. Of course, I think she's an animal, too. You want to know the truth?
What?
They'll say, oh, what a horrible thing he said about Nancy. She impeached me twice for nothing. Nothing. They'll say, oh, these people, the fakers back there. They'll say, what a horrible thing. He called Nancy Pelosi an animal. Let me tell you, what she does to this country and what she did.
Cheers, everybody. I got some communion wine here. Thanks for joining me.
I used the word yesterday. I shouldn't. My great first lady got very upset.
Appreciate all of you.
I will never use the word bullshit again.
We're going to hear about this. It's election day. Hope everybody voted. The question of the day is, did you vote? So if you voted, go ahead, let me know. I'll give out pocket change to everybody that voted. If you voted, I'll give you 100,000 pocket change if you let me know that you voted.
So continued attacks on Nancy Pelosi, extremely poor taste, classless, as I've said before. Money cannot buy you class. Now, interestingly, former Ted Cruz staffer Amanda Carpenter tweeted last night, quote, "I haven't seen a Trump speech in a while, but the way he spoke last night so favorably of executing drug dealers after a short 2-hour or less trial and then sending the bullet they were shot with to their families was jarring." Well, what Amanda Carpenter doesn't know is that this to their families was jarring. Well,
This is crazy. I haven't listened to a Trump speech in a while, but the way he spoke last night so favorably of executing drug dealers was after a short 2 hours or less trial and then sending them the bullet they were shot with to their families was jarring. Yeah, guys. And I mean, what a class of people, right? I mean, and this is the thing I don't like about the right, and I don't like about religion, is they're always finding classes of people to discriminate against that are effectively easy targets. You know, the war on drugs was a complete failure, but everybody does drugs and we know this. And this sort of, let's throw drug dealers under the bus because it's politically easy to do. It just drives me crazy as I sit here smoking a joint. But it's like, come around my neighborhood. I could take you over to the dispensary that I shop at, and you will immediately realize that the dispensary is one of the nicest businesses we have in the fucking city. Like, our dispensaries are a huge part of our economy, and they're some of the nicest buildings and businesses. So it's just so irritating to hear, because in his mind, drug dealers are black and brown people, often from the hood, if not from another country, that he's perfectly fine executing. But he wouldn't say that shit to the white businessmen that run the dispensaries in Lansing. Well, what's the fucking difference? I don't think it's dealing drugs that's the difference. I think it's the demographics of the person dealing the drugs that triggers this response.
And then sending the bullet they were shot with to their families was jarring. Well, what Amanda Carpenter doesn't know is that this has actually been part of Trump's routine at every rally for the last several months. And Kevin McCarthy was even asked about this on CNN. He's like, no. I missed this too. I didn't know. I mean,
Trump does too much for us to pay attention to.
This is a sick and disgusting group of people. Here's the clip that Amanda Carpenter is referring to. And again, if you haven't been paying attention to these rallies, you probably would be horrified.
All right, Melody, I appreciate you. Thanks for voting.
And the crowd cheers. The world is horrified, but the crowd cheers.
Guys, it's easy. Let me know you voted. You get 100,000 pocket change. I'm trying to just encourage people and incentivize people to vote. If you haven't voted, please go vote. Please. I love the fact that you're watching me, but please stop watching me right now and go vote. Do me a better even favor. Put your mask on, put your fucking AirPods or your earbuds in. You can I'm sure you have fucking data service. You can fucking listen to this podcast or show as you go vote. Please go vote.
Cheers.
I'm calling for the death penalty for drug dealers and human traffickers.
Holy shit! And look at them go crazy. Look at all of these high motherfuckers who just assume, of course, this law won't apply to their white asses, who are just sitting up here like all about it.
And reduce crime in our country by a minimum of 75% on the first day that this policy is instituted.
Also, guys, isn't Trump not the president anymore? Do y'all see what I'm seeing about this? Are y'all noticing something? Are y'all noticing this, y'all? Y'all, what is that behind him? Y'all can't, come on, y'all gotta notice this stuff, man. What is this behind him, y'all? Is that a fake Air Force One? Y'all, that's a fake Air Force One. Because Trump's big thing was he didn't like this old paint scheme. This is like a fucking Jackie Onassis paint scheme, right? This is the Jackie O Air Force One paint scheme. Trump's whole thing was he wanted new Air Force One with this new updated fucking power paint job. Y'all, this looks like a prop Air Force One that this nigga has behind him at these rallies. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. This is a lot better than the half falling asleep crowd of ugly ass randos he normally keeps behind him. You know, the fucking low IQ brigade he normally keeps behind him. But y'all, come on, this is some serious shit. That's a fake ass Air Force One. Y'all can't tell me. Somebody tell me something different than that's a fake Air Force One. Somebody tell me what the fuck is up. Now, that might be his plane, y'all. I'm not, the man is known to keep a jet. So is this his new plane now? Is this what he does now? He comes around on his jet now. Yeah, see, that's what it is. I knew something was fucked up about that. Yeah, I think he's whipping out a fucking presidential Air Force One lookalike with his planes. Yeah, Trump Force One back in Palm Beach County. Yeah, Trump Force One is what they call it. This nigga got himself a fake Air Force One because he can't handle not being president. And so now he brings out Trump Force One.
Again, if you did. And I don't like to bring this
I mean, ain't nothing illegal about it, right? Like, he's a private citizen. He can have a private plane. He can call it Trump Force One. He can make it just look just like Air Force One, but be, you know, the Trump logo and shit. But man, that's fucking far.
It's a tough subject. I don't know if the country is ready for it.
I love Jesus, also kill offenders. Exactly.
I see him. Say, President, you have
Jesus forgives all sins, but if you're a drug dealer, we should execute you on the site.
1.5 billion people. Do you have a drug problem? No.
Listen to this.
No drug problem.
Listen to this.
I say, how do you do that? I really sort of knew, but I didn't want to. How do you do that?
I drink.
And then he probably thought I was somewhat naive. He goes, we have quick trial. I said, what's a quick trial? I think I knew what that was, too. That means they catch a drug dealer. They give them a quick trial. Not a trial that takes 12 years and 12 years of appeals, 25 years later, and everyone's dead by the time they get...
This from the motherfucker who wants to respond to subpoenas, doesn't show up to court, and just delays. The motherfucker who's literally counter-suing the district attorney just to delay his case some more.
To the end of the... No, this is a trial that takes approximately 2 hours.
This is extraordinarily authoritarian. This is, you know... Russia has a 99% conviction rate, red flag, authoritarian nightmare.
And if they're guilty, they are executed. And the bullet, and you know,
that's
the bullet,
great.
I don't know if anybody wants to know this, it gets a little bit too graphic, but the bullet is sent to their families. You know that, right? You know that? It's actually sent to their families. It's pretty tough stuff. There's no games. So they have no drug problem whatsoever. He actually thought it was a foolish question. I said, do you have a drug problem? Absolutely not. What are you talking about? Of course.
Now, let's insert a little bit of sanity into what is a completely insane situation. During this rant, Trump always claims every drug dealer kills 500 Americans. Each drug dealer is responsible directly for killing 500 Americans. That's just made up. I mean, just Google it. Look for the information, check out anything you want to check. There is no evidence. He's grappled onto that fact that is not a fact, that claim. And it is based in
not
nothing.
A fact.
That's number one. Now, number two, even for Trump's
sorry, y'all, I got my neighbors doing the
drug dealers,
lawn mowing.
Do a 2-hour trial, send the bullet to their families. Even despite all of that, Trump pardoned many drug dealers when he was in office. So even his own supposed disdain and
does anybody be surprised to learn that Trump does drugs?
Many drug dealers when he was in office. So just another instance of hypocrisy for sure. Last thing here, and we're not doing a ton of these clips today. We've got a lot of things. Trump has started to refer to Trump rallies as religious experiences, and in fact referred to the Miami rally on Sunday as such a religious experience.
Shit,
but you know, the people, it was actually
guys, you missed one fucking Trump rally. We got to get back on covering these fucking Trump rallies, y'all. The midterms are over, though, so I guess I'm done. I guess I can excuse myself from Trump rally duty for a while, but I'm sure he's going to keep him going because now he's just going to launch into 2024.
The people, the music comes on, and then boom, we just got, it was like unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it.
Right.
You know, the teleprompters, one of them just crashed and broke.
Now, remember, for years, he criticized Barack Obama for using a teleprompter.
Nidimos is,
now Trump is talking
of course,
about,
correct.
Forget about the fact that
check
he
out
uses
Nidimos. Guys, Nitty's link is in the
He's
description, too. If you're not subscribed to Nidimos, the link is in the link should be in the description, so go ahead and take care of that. But yeah, I agree, man. This is crazy. Well, let's talk. We're going to talk about this. This is all a great tie into today's topic now that I'm settling and getting my wits back
really
about me.
Difficult to continue giving a speech.
The other one was useless because you ever ride in your car where you get a really heavy rainstorm and try and see through without the windshield wipers? Which, by the way, they planned. It's called planned.
Yeah, but at least Yahweh was a big scary volcano
that would last 100
that could fuck
years.
you up.
But they make them only so they last exactly 1 year, and then you have to buy a new one, which means they're smart, okay?
Trump probably doesn't realize you just take a paper towel to the windshield wiper, and then you get another year out of it every time you do it. But anyway, that's too pedestrian for Trump.
Let's let him keep doing. But you ever do that where you're driving and you can't see? Well, that's what I had with my one little remaining teleprompter. So we had to go, and we had a great evening. One of the greatest rallies we've ever had, and it was caused by God sending us the heaviest rain
God
I've ever seen.
sending
what's
us
funny about
the
that,
heaviest rain.
Some
Holy
of you might remember
shit.
when Trump was inaugurated in January of 2017.
And this man knows dick about religion.
That the rain stopped.
Dick about
and
religion.
The sun came out. And it was a sign from God about how happy God was about Trump being president. Now, it was a lie. It was just rainy that day.
Exactly.
But most importantly, the point.
By the way, the Pope did this. It's called Pope Magic. I was actually at World Youth Day in Toronto 2002. Some of y'all heard this story. But the Pope was known for doing this. JP2 was known for there be a big rain out, the day before a thing or the day of a thing, and then sort of in time for the Pope to show up and do his services, all of a sudden it would stop raining and the sun would come out, and when you're religious, it's really easy to get swept up in that as a sign of God's favor upon him. Now, nobody with half a skeptical brain is going to fall for that. But, there was a time I didn't have such a skeptical brain. And certainly Trump is trying to appeal to a population that is more than happy to buy into that type of narrative about his divinely appointed leadership.
God expresses his pleasure by making it sunny. And now Trump is saying God expressed his pleasure by sending rain to make it like a religious experience. That is emblematic of right-wing thinking. When A happens, it's because things are really good. But when the opposite of A happens, it's because things are really good. The meaning of A and the opposite of A is the same, depending on what's convenient at the time. This guy is almost certainly announcing next Tuesday that he's running for president. It is going to be an insane 2 years. It will be worse if these people clean house tonight. Let's hope we've all voted. Let's hope we prevent them from doing it. I want to tell you about something I use every day because it simplifies my life. I don't have hours to mathematically plan every meal.
All right, so the fuck is going on, y'all? This system is broke. Cliff said it yesterday. We're broke. We're broke. I told you guys the story about going to the poll and right-wing fucktard looks like, used to be in a lame-ass biker gang, but he can't ride a motorcycle type of fucktard. Your gross racist uncle's racist uncle or something. And he's trying to make a speech about, he doesn't think murder should be a right. And by that, I mean he's making an anti-abortion speech in the middle of the polling place. The system is broke. We just have to sort of hold our tongue and hope that it's over soon. We're really all in kind of a wait and see mode here, I guess, on a day like today, because it's election day and we're just waiting to see what's happening. And really, though, to not overplay my hand, I am truly nervous about democracy, y'all. And I just think that there's a certain complacency in our society that I don't know. All right, so let's flip topics here a bit, and I think y'all will see where I'm coming with this topic. And I'm gonna try to tie it to today's theme, which is just gonna be something I want to wax about for a few, and then I want to get to what we got going on. And it's political and social inertia. Our guy here, James Apperson, was on, I don't know, yesterday, day before, or whatever, and basically saying the bad news is that he genuinely believes that people will not make the kind of change necessary in their lives. Let's say, for instance, with regard to climate change, until it's too late. And if that's the case, then he's painting a pretty bleak picture. Essentially, he's trying to paint a bleak picture. He's basically saying, look, I don't think it really matters whether we push this issue or that issue, reform this or that. All we're really trying to do is make our lives more comfortable in the interim, because inevitably the inertia is going to kill us. People will not change until it's already too late. I hate to say this, I've experienced this in my own life, where there were certain things about me that I needed to grow, I needed to mature. And I always like to think that I just didn't know. I always say, if you'd have known better, you'd have done better, And there's so much, I could pinpoint this or that example or this or that thing that got me in trouble or got me in a hospital or led to the end of a relationship or falling out with a family member or losing a job or something like that. But there does seem to be that thing where it was after, something bad happened or things went too far or there were serious consequences, that all of a sudden, I started paying way more attention to certain things. Now, that did help, because as you grow and mature, now you can use that proactively going forward. you're a better partner with your next partner because you remember what you fucked up in your last relationship. You're like, holy shit, if I don't want to keep losing people I fall in love with, I got to get better about this or that. Okay, my last job, maybe I developed a reputation for this or that, or, I don't really like, where I feel like I fell short in this or that regard. All right, cool. I'm going to try to make sure, in the new situation or my next situation that, I try to establish a different trend, and if things get off course, that I address it. So this is an unfortunate part of human nature to me. We should be better, but this is who we are. And again, some of it I think is very reasonable, y'all. There's too many signs on the wall. There's too many indicators that we need to change, right? It's sensory overload. It's always been that way, right? Like literally for the whole of human history, people have always been trying to get other people to change and act differently. And there's always been a new fad, a new technique, a new thing the young folks are doing. And I'm literally like, well, let's take it back to prehistoric times, y'all. The fucking, we're all in these little fucking hunter-gatherer bands roaming around the fucking African savannah and shit. All right? And the young teenagers, who are over fucking... they got a little more energy and, they explore the region a little further, or they go kick it and do some new shit. And they're always fucking coming back trying to tell us, hey, man, we were kicking it with the young folks from the other tribe and, they're cool and we're going to set up a thing so we can go over there. I'm like, nah, we can't do that, Holmes. Nah, we can't do that, Holmes. Yeah, see, that's a setup. Yeah, see, last time we did. No, they said it's not a setup this time. They know last time it was a setup, but this time it really isn't a setup. Nope, sorry, not doing it. Right? Now, here's the thing, like, every once in a while, they onto some shit. And we go over there and we have we break bread and we trade. We get some new goods. We get some help. We get some protection for some other gangs, and shit pops off and it's lovely. But other times shit pops off and it's the same old story. We told you the first time, this is a setup. Sure enough, it was a setup. So social inertia isn't necessarily always a bad thing. People need more indicators that something is worth doing, that thing is worth changing. It takes a crowd to make a party. It's how I feel about Gather. Like, I had to get out here on YouTube, and whatever community building we could start to do on YouTube, we started showing people what to do. And it's different, but those of us that were talking in the chats, we were like, yo, we're doing something different on YouTube, right? We were building community, right? But we were, all right, let's build a Discord. We were trying to build a Discord up, cool. But then we were like, yo, we got to make content and do it differently because our content creators didn't really see the vision about, how to use the channel or a content creating platform to build community. So I had to get out here and do it. It's a long, hard road to hoe by yourself, but now other people are seeing it. It's getting more attention. Other people are coming around. We're connecting with other content creators that are happy to build community. We have people like Pastor Apperson helping out, doing more than most to pull his weight and help, right? And we have other people stepping up and turning out. So it goes and it grows, and my One Black Friend's growing, and Tux, and the list goes on. It's the same thing with Discord. You know, when we first started telling people, look, man, Discord's dope. You know, this trying to build a community between YouTube chats and comment sections all over the internet. You know, that's you know, it's cool that we're all getting to know each other. It's nice that we can all, you know, pop up in a live chat and say, oh, hey, Nitty, how you doing today? Oh, what's up, Carrie Ann? Oh, it's great to see you guys today. That's awesome. But how the hell are we going to build community if the only time we can talk to each other is in the comment section of a YouTube video or, you know, in a live chat during a stream? This just wasn't enough. So you can't sustain a community like that. There's platforms for that. Discord is one of them. It's what Discord is for. But we got out here telling YouTube cats, join a Discord. Bro, y'all, people were acting like I was asking them to fucking pack their bags and move across the country. Like, it was like, guys, literally, we're trying to build a community on the internet. There's literally platforms explicitly for that. Discord's literally like pretty much the best at it. It's used ubiquitously everywhere. But again, it was like pulling teeth just to get people to get on a Discord. But eventually, enough people did it. People started realizing, holy shit, this is actually true. We can promote ourselves here. We can even stream in here. We can fucking let everybody know when somebody's live. Right now, all of a sudden, you're not just guessing, or if you don't get the notifications, or if you don't even know a streamer exists, somebody might drop a Discord about, oh, so-and-so's live, or so-and-so just did a dope-ass video. That's what we realized. So we had to put the effort into it, but once enough people did it, it's easy. Now there's like fucking 80 of us in there. So if you don't join the Discord, that's on you, but it's a lot easier for people to onboard now because when they go to the Discord, they can already see what it's for, what it does. We need to be more active on it actually, but that's again because we're doing similar with Gather. What's my point here? My point is, that inertia is built into us, and it's okay. It's not, there's nothing wrong with you if you don't wake up in the morning going, oh my God, how can I completely interrupt my routine and not get anything done today because I'm learning some new tool. That is all people would do. If people just switched up every time somebody made a suggestion to them, literally none of us would ever get anything done. You'd wake up in the morning, you'd be like, I shouldn't wear what I wore yesterday because so-and-so said it'd be better if I wore something like this, blah, blah, blah. So now you spend an hour getting dressed because you're trying to improve on your normal dress routine. You go to the kitchen to fucking eat breakfast, and you're like, fuck what I normally do. I don't even have the right shit in my kitchen to make the right type of breakfast, right? So now you're fucking on Instacart or whatever because you've got to get new groceries because your groceries suck, right? You're like, oh shit, I should have got up 2 hours early because you know what? I actually realized I'm fucking over the economy by driving to work every day. So really, I should have fucking bike to work every day. So actually, fuck this. Let me take all this off, put it in a bag, put on some fucking workout clothes, bike my ass to work. That's going to take a fucking hour. Now go get changed. Do you see where this is going, folks? You would never get a goddamn thing done ever if you were constantly trying to optimize every single thing you did based on other people's feedback all the fucking time. Matter of fact, even in the process we do, like, y'all see me do this like really long, lazy, iterative thing with our Vita Ed videos with Rob Pennock, my teaching mentors. It's very deliberate. Why? It's to avoid premature optimization, right? We record a scratch version of the video. We make a whole bunch of changes. We mock up a whole bunch of shit. We know all along we're going to have to make changes to the script. We're going to rewrite this. We're going to want a different backdrop. Why don't we change any of that? Because it doesn't matter right now. So you don't want to waste a bunch of time, right? And so you have to actively build this even into the way you work creatively so that you're not never, in this position, right? So I want us all to recognize the power of this, because I don't want this to be cheap. I don't want it to be like, oh, Jay made a YouTube video. He basically said, get your ass in gear. Now get your ass in gear. That would be cheap and easy. I'm not trying to do that. What I'm trying to propose here is what I'm on today is very hard. What we're working against is very hard, and I'm trying to point out there's a reason it's hard. And as you get older, the harder it gets. Right? Because now you've lived long enough. You've got extra decades of life. And so you've seen that much more come and go. We talk about this in my club. Like, y'all know I'm in a GTA motorcycle club. I've been in the club 5 years. Let's come back to that 5 years in a second. When I first joined the club, people said shit that sounded crazy to me as a new recruit. They'd be like, oh yeah, I don't even add like hang-arounds. Like, you go up the ranks, right? So you start as a hang-around, which means you're really not even in the club yet. You're just hanging around the club. You're getting to understand the rules and the culture, get to know everybody. And we're deciding whether or not we even want to formally make you a prospect, right? So that's the hang around phase. It's like the first step of recruitment. Then if you get voted on, you can become a prospect. That means, okay, now we're seriously considering you for membership. We want to make sure you continue to progress and know your shit and get to know everybody. Then you have to get voted on again to become a member, right? And then from there, there's a hierarchy of officers. You become an OG after a year. And then we also celebrate pretty much years after that, 2 year, 3 year, up to like a 4 year patch. I currently have a 4 year patch. But like the thing that is funny is the reason people said that is because they had been around the club long enough to see so many hang-arounds and prospects come and go that they were just saying, I don't invest in getting to know these motherfuckers until they're around long enough that I know they're actually going to stick around and be worth that time and effort. And even though it sounded funny to me at the time, especially because I'm new to all this and it's a fucking video game club, and they weren't being disrespectful, right? They weren't rude. Like, if they were on, you know, they still kicked it with us. They still played with us. We still all had a good time. It wasn't like they were mean to me or any of the other recruits. They were just not going out of their way to like get to know us the way some of the other officers and stuff would. And so it was just funny, right? And then as I went through, you know, at first, you know, you make that effort to get to know all the hang-arounds and get to know all the prospects and all of that stuff. But now that I've been in the club going on 5 years, I get exactly what those people are saying. And in many instances, I've become that exact person. And matter of fact, sometimes with my club, I joke about it. And I was joking, like, sometimes I'm not only, I don't get to know you when you're a hang-around, I don't get to know you when you're a prospect. Sometimes it's like, I don't even get to know you if you're a full patch until you become an OG. Why? Because it's like I've seen so many people not just go through hang-arounds all serious and gung-ho and then fucking flake and leave or get kicked out for doing stupid shit. Not only so many people go through prospects and then flake, I've seen so many motherfuckers work their ass off, be on the game every day, be up the club's booty hole with sacred death for life and how loyal they are and how much the club means to them and how much it's the family they've always been looking for, and the blase and the fucking glavinoids, they get their motherfucking full patch, and a couple of months later, there's a falling out over a fucking, I don't know, some shooting incident or some fucking social media drama or some shit, and all of a sudden, these motherfuckers are gone a couple of weeks later. Sometimes starting some shit and trying to take other members in a clique with them. Sometimes becoming enemies and infiltrators and antagonists and all types of shit. But I thought you was sacred death for life a couple weeks ago. Now you just can't get over a fucking incident on a video game. Some shit happened. You got your feelings hurt over something somebody said on a fucking social media post, and now you're gone? Huh? What is my point? The older you get, the more life experience you have, the more people have to show you what's really up. The stronger signals have to become to motivate you. If you're new to the game, you see somebody showing up every day for a week, blah, 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 you're like, oh my God, I have a new best friend. Right? Not me. Again, that's a really fun experience, but I'm just more of, I gotta see what's up, right? Even a lot of people, I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't really have anybody invited to Discord that I really haven't known for like months. When I made the list of Discord invites, y'all, I didn't fucking go to some list or some chat. I literally sat down and I thought like, oh, who are my must-have friends? And I made a list of those people. And then I sat there and I was like, okay, let me check my recent messages. I literally checked the code. I was like, oh, yeah, so-and-so didn't pop in my mind, so-and-so didn't pop in my mind. Yeah, let's make sure they get in there. Boom, 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 boom. Done. Because that's what it means to know people, right? I don't have to wonder who you are, or you understand what I'm saying to you? It's because I've known these people for months. And most of them, I didn't really know who was gonna be who. Like, I didn't know who was gonna be who till you just realized it. You realize, like, one day I just realized, holy shit, Carrie Ann Chrysler's probably with me like 10 hours plus a day every day for like a really long time. It's just a thing that happens. And then you realize it. Oh, you're like, shit, who's consistently there 2 o'clock in the morning all the time? AR, Lena, Cameron. Okay, who are the people that are always starting the day with you? Spider, Melody Joy, UC Love. It's just, that's what it is. So what am I getting at, y'all? This is all beautiful. It's all well and good, but this is what makes it hard to change. This is what makes it hard to change. To a lot of people, I hate to say this, Black Lives Matter just sounds like a trend and like not even a very good one. Y'all, I'm a black man. I know I work at the University of Minnesota. Go Golfers, okay? I'm not trying to be racially insensitive. I'm just trying to be realistic. If you're a white person in the South and you're 50 plus, it's just sitting on some bullshit to you. I get that. Why? I'm not saying you're a fucking asshole. What I'm saying is you've seen so much racially motivated shit throughout all of your years on this earth, including so many murders of black men by the police, that even if you're the most anti-racist of people, you're just at this point like, yeah, okay, so that was like one particular, just the like Johnny come lately black guy of the year, black guy death of the year goes to George Floyd, you know? And yeah, amazing that it sparked international outrage and uplift and motivation, but so did the assassination of MLK and Malcolm X, and now there's a Emmett Till movie. You know, Emmett Till shook up the world when that happened, and they lived through Rodney King, right? They lived through the early 10s wave, right? The Eric Gardner and You know, that the names, George Zimmerman, right? That was I can't think of that kid's name, right? But there's been a lot. Amadou Diablo, right? They've lived through all of that. They lived through all of that. So what the fuck is a George Floyd and a Black Lives Matter to people like that? If somebody says that to me, I'm just like, I get it. Like, totally, I just get it, right? And so they're not going to be motivated. Yes, no, now is the time to take down racism, and we are going to finally create the American utopia for everyone, because now it's just not. It just isn't. Sorry. If you're like fucking under 25 and that's how you feel, that's just a side effect of you effectively being Johnny-come-lately to adulthood, right? And I'm sitting here at 36, and I'm basically still a Johnny-come-lately to adulthood. I've literally been adult less than 20 years. So all the people who have been an adult as long as I've been alive are like, yeah, come back when you've got a couple more decades under your belt. And again, I get it. Like, I get it. So because it just is what it is. And that's why I gave the example of the technologies we've used. You just have to do it. You've got to change. You've got to lead the way. You've got to go show up at the thing. Show people what it is. That helps. Once you show up and you show out, hey, y'all, look at what we could do YouTube differently. People, oh, yeah, we could do YouTube differently. Yo, everybody, check it out. The Discord is popping. When the Discord wasn't popping, it was a few of us. Me, No Name, a bunch of the OG people. What were we doing? We were putting everything in Discord we could think of. Cameron, like, we all started. Lena, I remember Lena, y'all don't even know. Lena didn't want to join Discord at first. Lena was like, I don't really do Discord. Sorry. We finally got Lena in Discord. Like, it just is what it is. And then it takes a crowd to make a party. Once more and more people, it's going to be the same thing with Pinochle. That's why I'm setting all of Pinochle up, because I know it's going to be me. It's going to be a couple of, Carrie Ann already plays euchre. So euchre, Pinochle, they're similar. You know, Pinocchle's basically like a sexed up euchre. All right, so she's gonna do it. I know probably AR and Joel's always down. Joel and AR are like my game pioneers. You know what I mean? I know Cameron likes cards. I know Lena's trying to figure it out. Okay, once that happens, and then y'all start to see me and my dad play at a high level, that's a wrap. That's a wrap. That's a wrap. Because everybody's going to start playing just to get better. Everybody's going to start figuring out the house rules. We're going to start getting these regular Pinochle games. Everybody going to be having fun with it. Then everybody who's new to the community is going to show up and be like, what is that? What are y'all doing? That looks like fun. Everybody's like, oh, that's Pinochle. They're going to be like, I don't know how to play Pinochle. It looks complicated as shit. We're going to be like, figure it the fuck out and learn how to play. They're going to be like, okay. Right? Because they're just going to be motivated. It's like when you see enough people doing something, you just want to do it again. Why? We talked about it this week on Hot Program. It's because it's what all your friends are doing. If you see, again, you got to think about this magical number. There's a magical number, and I'm calling it a magical number. I'm kidding. It's not really a magical number, y'all, but it's helping you think of these type of things. We would call this a threshold effect in research, right? So there's a threshold effect, and in this case, I'm calling it a magical number because social events can be quantified in how many people are there, right? And you don't have fractions of people. So let's talk about this magic number threshold. It's a very simple concept. There are certain things that Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, Michael Brown, thank you, YouTube Punk. Those are the names I was thinking of, and sorry, I've just been ranting, didn't look up. But appreciate you, Punk. Thank you. Those are exactly the names I was thinking of. And again, the point just being that's a lot to live through, right? We've lived through all of those. But yeah, so, all right, so let's talk about this threshold concept. There are things you really want to do. If I ask Nerdy Rodent right now to play Nerdy Rodent's favorite game, let's just say it's off rip going to be a yes. He's going to take two things into consideration. One, I love that game. Two, me and Jay are friends. Done deal every single time. Easy. Okay. Let's not even talk about that. That's not interesting. Let's talk about instead a game that you don't know anything about. And let's just call it unfamiliar and to you uninteresting, right? So I'm not saying you hate it or it looks bad or stupid or whatever. It's just not your thing. And you don't really want to get into it because there's kind of a learning curve and you don't really want to deal with that, right? All right, so cool. That's the nature of the thing that we're doing, okay? So the question we're trying to answer here is, what will it take for you to show up and do that with your friends, right? And so here's the thing. And again, this is a gross oversimplification, but it's how I think sort of as a, we used to call it back of the napkin anthropology or sociology, where you're trying to, create a simplified model in your head of a phenomenon, right? So you can analyze the dynamics. All right. So often leads to prototyping experiments. But anyway, the point here is, if you understand community and relationship building the way I do, there's a level at which people start to do things that they otherwise wouldn't do, is the simplest way to put it. Otherwise, you would not do this thing. But you do it because your friends are doing it. And the point here is to say two things. Number one, it's easier to get you to do those things the more of your friends are doing them, to put that simply. And then number two, what's interesting, the more of your friends are doing something, the more motivated you are to do something, even if it's difficult or uncomfortable. So let's say where that goes. All right, cool. Let's start by saying we've got this basic activity A. It's just, again, something I otherwise wouldn't be doing. And YouTube Punk calls me up one day and he says, Jay, hey man, we haven't had time to kick it off stream for a while and just relax. I kind of want to play this game. You want to come over, smoke, hang out, and play this game. Now remember, this is a game I normally wouldn't play, right? A lot of times I'm going to say what? I'm going to say, sure, YouTube Punk. Why? Because I don't really give a fuck about the game. I just want to spend time with YouTube Punk. If he wants to play this game, as long as it isn't god awful, like, I probably don't give a shit, right? A perfect example would be darts. Believe it or not, I don't like throwing darts. I'm not into darts. I might watch some people throw them on TV and be like, oh, that looks super impressive, but literally darts don't motivate me. But if YouTube Punk wants to throw some fucking darts, fine. If you don't mind me fucking up your furniture because I can't aim, fine. Let's play darts. Right? But let's pretend for some reason I'm either one, really not in the mood to play darts, or two, I see YouTube Punk all the time, and so darts isn't a good enough excuse for me to leave my house to see YouTube Punk because I'll probably see him anyway and I won't have to play darts, right? But let's say this time YouTube Punk calls me and he says, hey Jay, I'm going to show up to play darts and Nerdy Rodent's coming and Carrie Ann is coming, right? Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I guess I'll come, right? Y'all see what I'm getting at? It's almost like going over this threshold. Why? Because, well, now it's a bigger social event. I get to see more of my friends. There's way more added value to me. And so, God, there's too many of my friends that are going to be in the same place for me to, it overcomes the FOMO, right? My fear of missing out on the social event is now outweighing my, apathy towards darts, right? Now, here's the thing. Let's say Carrie Ann, Lena, and YouTube Punk are all getting together with Nerdy Rodent as well. But they're all going to play a competitive Call of Duty tournament, and it's players only. Right? So you don't have to be, there's no skill level or anything required, but you have to play, you have to be a whatever, right? So to something like that, I might still say no. Why? Well, because it's too serious. It's like I don't play that game, and I'm really trash at it. Plus, there's probably like the humiliation factor of like I'm just gonna be ass at this, and I can't just kind of lurk or like. And again, that's probably a bad example because in real life I'd probably do it anyway because who cares? I'd just be bottom frag and lose at the tournament and chill with my friends. But let's pretend it's something I really don't want to do because it's actually difficult. I got a good example. Let's pretend it's rock climbing. I don't want to climb fucking rocks. All right, so I'm not going climbing, guys. Sorry, I'm still out. Right? Why? Because it's climbers only, and I don't want to climb. Right? I literally don't want to climb. If it was just something I was apathetic towards, like darts, I'd do it. But now it's fucking climbing walls, and fuck it, I'm not climbing walls. Right? Well, here's where I think this model gets interesting, and you guys will see what I'm saying. What if they say, we're going climbing, it's climbers only, it's YouTube Punk, Carrie Ann, Nerdy, Lena, but James Apperson's coming, Uncle Bobby's coming, and Cameron's coming. Well, here's what's fucked up. Now I might go climbing. Yeah, I really don't want to climb. Climbing's a pain in the ass, and I still probably suck. I'm still going to be the worst. It's still going to be humiliating. But again, there's too many of my friends for me to not want to go now. It's really turned in from a small everybody's going to be there and you don't want to miss out to a big everybody's going to be there and you don't want to miss out. And now that there's a big everyone's going to be there and you don't want to miss out, I'm actually not just more willing to go to something I'm otherwise wouldn't be willing to do. I'm actually more willing to do something harder. Something that's going to be more physically demanding for me, right? I can anticipate I'm going to be physically exhausted as a result of this now. I'm going to be tired. It's going to actually hurt to some extent, and I don't like it. And I have to compete, and I'm going to be embarrassed, and everybody's going to realize I'm out of shape, and all of this shit that a person might go through, right? But it's all that's not going to matter because it's a big. Everyone's going to be there, and I don't want to miss out. So if you guys see what I'm getting at here, it's sort of like this is how you deal with inertia. This is what's built into the human system. We use these type of thresholds, we use these type of signals to understand when and where we're going to do something, especially when it comes to something difficult or something that requires change or learning. We're a lot more likely to attack a learning curve or take on something difficult if it's over a certain social threshold. It's the same thing with like fighting games. Like some of these games are really difficult to learn and get good at. But again, if you can anticipate having really great times with your friends as a result, and then with your friends participating in this much larger fighting game community that you've always, wanted to be able to participate in, again, it's worth the hours and hours and hours and hours and hours it's going to take to get decent at this thing, right? So that's kind of where I wanted this conversation to go. Because I think for so many people in our lives, when it comes to talking about things like politics and religion, and I think it's fair to put them both together because I think they both suffer from this. People are, I think, more open and willing to change than we think they are. And I think what we often see as resistance or because it may manifest itself as resistance, and it may manifest itself even as hostility towards you for trying to help them grow. I think those are really symptoms of the inertia that's going on. The inertia, it's like couch lock when you get stoned. They've been sitting still on something for so long, and it's become such a huge part of their identity that they don't even realize that now they've got all this extra resistance built in because change feels that much harder for them. It feels that much more overwhelming. Like because if you're questioning their political affiliations or if you're questioning their religious ideas, you're talking about something they've been sitting on for a lifetime. And all these other earth-shattering events and have come and gone and have not required them, seemingly, to make these changes. So why now? Why now? Why should they respond differently to climate change in 2023 than they did in 2003? Why should they respond differently to the death of George Floyd than they did to Michael Brown or Tamir Rice or Trayvon Martin? And for some people, all the way back to maybe Emmett Till. Why should they care any more about the impeached Donald Trump than they did about the impeached Bill Clinton, than they did about the scandalous Richard Nixon? YouTube Punk, what's your game? I think you put us on to Tetris. Actually, I normally use Tetris as a fantastic example of the community threshold effect in the game, and I think Tetris is a phenomenal example of that. And yeah, no, I actually am into Tetris because of this whole community thing, and I've even fallen for the fucking argument that Tetris might be close to an idealized video game. Like it might be in that space where it represents everything right about video games. But we could have a whole episode on Tetris, I'm sure. And I'm sure we will at some point, probably a lot of them. But yeah, this is interesting to me, folks, because I'm trying in my own way to empathize with people I very much disagree with. To come in my own way to come to terms with the seeming unwillingness of those around me to change. At the same time, I'm trying to empower myself to not be defeated and feel I have to accept it. There's this difference between understanding something so that, you can think about it more critically and more reasonably. That doesn't mean you're waving your hands up. You're just saying, oh, okay, this thing I'm trying to work against, it's pretty fucking serious. My opponent, the thing I'm working against, that hill I gotta climb, it's a serious fucking hill. And climbing it ain't gonna be no fucking joke. But, hey, Even if I don't make it to the top of that bitch, trying to climb it's a great exercise. And you can bet your bottom ass me and this hill are going to get into it today. Right? I may get to the top of that hill. The hill may get to the top of me. But me and this hill are going to do some fucking business today. Okay? And that's how I think we need to be with these things in our lives. We got to say, I'm going to work against the inertia inherent, not just in this cult or this group or that group. Let's all admit that it's part of all of us. And yes, to varying degrees, to some groups more than others. Maybe it gets harder as you get older or whatever, but maybe not. Maybe for some people it gets easier. Why would it get For some people, change gets easier as you get older. I hope to be one of those people. Why? You're more experienced. Sometimes you have more financial security. A lot of times you have more social independence, right? You're not as dependent on the people who raised you, so you can go your own way, intellectually and things like that. A lot of times you can surround yourself with people who think differently than you, and they have more influence on you, or there's all sorts of reasons somebody can get more flexible over the years. So, but that's what we want to work towards while recognizing it's hard. Now, where does that become a critical shift that we got to make? Well, I hate to say this, but we got to work harder. It's that simple. Why? The signals have to be that much stronger, right? So, let me say that the question, right, that I'm trying to empathize with is a person who's lived through a lot, and they're going to say to you, they're going to ask you right now, why should I? Okay, we just elected. We did the midterms right now. All right, next comes the holiday season. Then we're going to roll that fucking calendar over. Why should I now in 2023 respond to George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement differently than I did to Tamir Rice, Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, Amadou Diablo, Emmett Till, etc.? Now, what am I saying? I'm saying fucking answer the question. Because we are trying to do something differently now. And that might be the best answer you can give them. But be prepared to give it to them. Because that's what I believe. If you believe like me, you may not be of that opinion. But y'all hear me say a lot that context matters, and I'm sick of people saying things without taking the time into context. What do I mean by that? I'm always saying you're saying this shit in 2022. You're not saying it in 2002. You're not saying it in 92 or 82 or 1872. So it hits differently to say something racist right now. It hits differently to say something anti-Semitic or homophobic or anti-LGBT or anti-women or misogynistic, whatever. Like, all of that hits differently right now. All jokes aside, right? If it's a joke, I don't give a shit. Bring it on. The more inappropriate the joke, a lot of times the better. Y'all know me. But when it comes to serious shit, y'all, it hits differently to make these mistakes right now. And we're trying to hold people accountable in a different way right now. But we have to find a way to communicate that. And so that's what I'm saying. We got to recognize the inertia that we're fighting against. Sometimes, and this is who I was thinking about, y'all. I wasn't really thinking about the extremists. Again, y'all know a lot of my counter-apologetics. I'm thinking about my family. And I'm trying to understand if I could really break down. I can't break shit down with your family. You can't hit your family up and be like, hey, Ma, hey, Grandma, you know what's up? I've been psychoanalyzing the family lately. And here's what I've been thinking. So I was really breaking down how you guys raised me. And check this out, right? You just can't do that, right? You'd be a psychopath if you talk to your family that way. And they would rightfully stop taking your phone calls. I couldn't blame them. But nevertheless, that's how a lot of us do. And then we get to wax with our friends. And if something sticks with you long enough, maybe you wax with the shrink about it. If you're fortunate enough to have a competent one. Now, but what I was thinking about is how are they so much part of the problem, right? And you can't tell them that they're enabling or supporting, you know, a lot of that, telling them they're enabling the enemy and all of that, that's not going to hit them right. But I think this conversation about there's inertia, that there's progress that needs to be made. There's a new perspectives we need them to take. We need to cast off the religion of our slave masters, literally. We need to cast off conservative ideas that just don't work. A lot of them have become stand-ins for religious ideas, you know, whether it's trickle-down economics or, you know, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, all this type of stuff, right? And there's just a lot of inertia with the sort of older mentality, old school memes that just haven't died off quick enough, for lack of a better way to put it. And now we've got to actively work against that inertia by literally dramatizing. I think MLK would say, he talked about this. If you read his stuff carefully, he talked about dramatizing things. Now, he wasn't saying act a fool. But what he was trying to say was you have to communicate the urgency of the moment by communicating in the moment with some fucking urgency. And if we don't do that, then our message is going to fall on deaf ears. Not because people aren't listening, not because the message isn't good or correct, but simply because it's presented itself just like just another message. Okay, just another period of protest, just another uprising, just another, you know, flash in the pan, everybody trying to be different. You could go back to the 90s, y'all. I remember I was watching a Michael Jackson performance at the Super Bowl. It's a great thing to look up on YouTube, right? And you could just see that in the early 90s or whatever the fuck this was, how much racial harmony was the theme, right? Like, it's so crazy. I mean, I'm sure it's a crazy, weird thing to play on YouTube, and I'm not even gonna dare fuck with playing some Michael Jackson on YouTube. Could probably get away with it because it was a live performance, but whatever. The point is, you could tell that the NFL and the state, like, everybody was in on the racial harmony of the moment. And if you would have bought into what they presented at that damn Super Bowl performance, you'd be like, oh yeah, America's gonna have racism solved in like the next 90 days because it's just clearly all hands on deck to end racism right now. And so I get that for those of us that this is our first go-round or one of our first go-rounds of actively, passionately caring and trying to figure out how to be change agents as, you know, maturing adults in the world. And kudos to us for caring enough to try to figure it out. It can be really disheartening to look around you and feel like, man, if only everybody else could get on board, we could really knock this thing out of the park right now. Not saying we'd solve all our problems. Matter of fact, be honest with you, I'm not a person who even thinks of them as being problems to solve. I think certain things like violence, prejudice, coercion, manipulation, all these type of things, they're just human nature, so they're always going to be there. You can't solve them. They're not even problem. You could, I guess you could try to solve them as best you could, and I wouldn't I wouldn't chastise you for trying to solve them, certainly. If you think it could create a better world, I'd be more than happy to live in it and do anything to help you get there. But I think it's so much it's really fulfilling right now to accept that this is where we're at and then just be content to work towards making it better. Just making it better, safer, more viable for everybody. We don't have to think, I don't think we have to solve the problem to validate the urgency that we have so many problems, that just making shit better immediately in any way, shape, or form possible is worth doing. That's the optimism that I took out of even that conversation with James I spoke on. She's like, oh, Jay, the terrible thing was he was saying the world's fucked and we're all gonna die. Yeah, well, that was always to happen. I mean, if you want to ask me for my prediction as a biologist, I mean, that's the fate of any species, is either something bad happens to your species and it goes bye-bye, or you do something bad as a species and you go bye-bye. But nothing's survived so far, so the thought of humanity not surviving actually doesn't even really bother me. Again, I think we should do what we can to stick around as long as possible, and if we could get the fuck up out of here to quote-unquote solve some of those problems, if we can escape this planet, that would be really good. But again, that would help, right? Because it would sustain us maybe long enough, because the big problem is the sun's going to blow up. So I don't see how we get far enough outside of the sun's radius to avoid what's going to happen when the sun blows up. But again, I'm happy to hear the argument that we need to get the fuck off this planet that we've ruined first, and get ourselves to somewhere where we've got more time to figure that out. All right. You're not going to get any complaints over here. So yeah, y'all, let's work to make shit better, accepting how hard it really, really is. But then using that understanding to even just communicate explicitly with people. Hey, look, I know we're talking about something really difficult for you. I know we're talking about things that are very important to your identity. And it's really hard for you to see things in another way. But we really need you to try. We really do need you to try. And commend everyone you can for even trying. Because for all of the reasons we've been discussing, it's really hard for people to change. It's really hard for people to change. But they have to. People have to change. And they always have. So yeah, man, let's get it, man. I'm with all of y'all, man. If I'm pulling somebody out from the grave right now, it's Christopher Hitchens. But I do sympathize with those who wish MLK was around and miss his voice. I think, yeah, I don't know. People probably think I'm crazy for pulling Hitchens out. I don't know if I'm saying I'm pulling him out over MLK. Maybe I was trying to be contrarian. I guess given that choice, so that I'm thinking about the greater good, I better go ahead and pull MLK out of the grave too. All right, I want to take a quick break, and then I want to focus on this recruiting thing. What am I talking about? This publishing thing, getting this document ready. And then I want to get into the evening because I need to call it an early evening because I got to get up and teach tomorrow. But let's do a little bit of counter-apologetics. There is a new Prophet Azad. We'll take a quick Prophet Azad and chill break. I want to thank everybody for joining me, man. This felt like a really meaningful conversation. And I really didn't know what to talk about today. Not in the sense I didn't know what I needed to talk about. I knew what I needed to do today. And I was kind of just going to wax about different election-related videos. But then I was really reflecting on what I've been kind of dealing with personally, because I always consider this a two-way exchange. Like, everything as a result of what I stream or what's going on in the community or what I'm seeing is always influencing me. You know, only time it's probably not, or at least actively, is when I'm sleeping, you know. Because those of y'all don't know, we're like a 24/7 operation. Like, when I'm not live, we're still in Gather. You know, we're pretty much together in Gather, talking, waxing, thinking, and being together till we all call it a night, and then we do it all over again the next day. But anyway, what I'm really going through is trying to figure out how to move in my own interpersonal space with people differently, because I think I'm becoming much more vocal in my opposition to certain things. I'm just not really the type of person to hold my tongue, especially not when I feel strongly about something. And most people kind of know that about me, but you know, I'm grown, right? So it's just different to be like, oh shit, I grew up to be you know, somebody that's not easy for everybody to deal with. And so I'm trying to understand where other people are coming from. Because sometimes being an academic is like a cheat code in life. Because number one, you could always learn and grow. And so you're where you're at because you learn professionally. So that means you at least learn well enough to have gotten your achievements. And then if you're somebody like me, it just genuinely you have to accept that learning might be your passion in life. Like, I probably think about education the way, you know, LeBron James or Stephen Curry or one of the people I watch on TV thinks about basketball. I don't think I'm the greatest like that, but it's the same passion, right? It's the same, this is what I do in the world. But for me, basketball, even though I love basketball and it was a huge passion of mine growing up, you know, basketball is just a game to me. And I wouldn't even want to play it the way they have to play it, even if you offer me all the money they have. Like, it's crazy about it, right? If I paid you Steph money, Curry's money, you wouldn't play basketball for a living? Not really, dog. Do you know how hard it is to be an NBA player? Like, let's just say I was that good at shooting the basketball. Bro, that don't mean I want to really live that life. Like, basketball practice every day, press conferences, traveling around the world. Like, I don't know. I don't know. It's a lot of basketball. You know, you got to kind of stay in your lane. I could play drums like that, but I don't know about a sport, man. I don't know. Right? And I have to accept that that's how other people are about learning. Like, it was something they had to do when they was a kid, you know, but it isn't really their forte. They don't really do it for fun. And, you know, it's not central to their identity. So they're not always excited for the changing and the growing and the perspective taking that's required by learning as an adult. And it's not an unreasonable way to be. They don't do it every day. They're not learning every day. They're not assessing other people's learning every day. You know, even I was sitting there grading my students' midterms and talking to Rob about their midterm performance. And every time you give an exam, you always have issues with grades and feedback from your students and students that are not happy about their grades and stuff like that. And some of them you can literally see their learning. And part of their learning is the consequences of the bad choices they made. You know, you didn't have your thing in the right format, so it didn't display properly, so you lost points in your exam. Well, now you want those points back. Nope, you should have followed the instructions. Now you learn how serious it can be to overlook something so simple. But again, that's the learning. And then you get to see them get it right the next time. But they're fucking students at university. That's what they're supposed to do. When you're dealing with politics and religion, you're talking to motherfuckers that's 45. That's raising families. You know, learning isn't the game anymore. So yeah, it's something to really, I'm having to really like be like, wow. Like, my life is really different than a lot of people. And it's okay. It's okay on both sides. It's okay to be me. I don't have to apologize for who I am. I shouldn't apologize for being the way I am about my education. Actually, it's pretty predictable, in its own way. And I'm not judging others, but you know, it is what it is. So yeah, I appreciate y'all for being here with me. Let's damn, I forgot what we were supposed to be. We're supposed to be checking something out. Oh, we're gonna check out the new Prophet Azad. Let's go. Where's my guy at? Boop, 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 boop. Boop, 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 boop. Man, let's do the chat screen. We'll put both of us full screen.
Made possible by a grant from S.R. Foxley, Bob Generic, and Q, and by the generous support of viewers like you. If you wish to join them in pledging to this channel, please find a link to the Prophet Azad Patreon below.
When does the being a kid stop, by the way? I don't really know. It's funny, like, I like teaching at a university, and I'm going to be honest with you, part of the reason I like teaching at the university is because my students are adults. Obviously, for obvious social reasons, right? Number one. But number two, like, my teaching style is very much geared towards adults. Now, that doesn't mean my teaching style wouldn't work at a different teaching level. Matter of fact, my teaching style, my teaching philosophy is all influenced by an outstanding high school teacher. Outstanding fucking high school teacher. His name is Fred Hinkst. He's a friend of mine. I need to email his ass so we could catch up. We've both just been busy as shit. But he's like one of my teaching heroes. And I try to just put my own spin on the Fred Hinkst approach. But he treats his students very much like adults. And that's kind of where I got the vibe from. Everything in his classroom is flipped and weird because everything is on the students. Figuring out what to do, how to do it, where to put their butts, how to wash their asses, you know, all of that is on the students, you know, and he's just there to guide them. You know, when somebody comes up to Fred Hink's desk with a question, you do not get an answer. You get that's a great question. You should go figure it the fuck out and tell the rest of your classmates, not in so many words, you know, but he'll be like, that's a great question. You know, it shows that you're really paying attention to this, that, and the third. And he's like, I'm sure a lot of your classmates are wondering the same thing. You know, why don't you take some time to figure it out, even if you have to do so overnight, and come back tomorrow and let us know what you found. And it's a crazy flipping the script he does. But yeah, I find it to be much more natural at the collegiate level, because you really can take on the reality that your students are sort of at the last step before their professional world, and so you can really start to amp up the, no, you guys are professionals. Like, I'm not going to sit here and treat you like children. You got to come in here and work. But what I'm getting at is I love the fact that my students are young adults, and I genuinely try to treat them very differently than I would if they were underage. Everything in my classroom is laid back, casual, and hey, we're all adults here type of mentality. Try to have a lot of fun. Streaming helps, actually. A lot of my classes, now that I teach, especially I teach exclusively online, teaching is more or less like streaming for me, but streaming about my science and my research, so it's pretty easy in that regard. But I do still treat my students in a certain way that I hope doesn't juvenilize them, but I do speak of them almost as your kids because they're your responsibility. And you have that stewardship over them. And it's weird because I don't even like to have, you have some hierarchical relationship with them, but I like for my students to see me as somewhat of a peer in their learning community. That's how my professors treated me. Like, my professors, they were my professors, and they may have graded me, but those responsibilities we limited to the classroom. They didn't make me feel like they were on a different level than me or something like that outside of the classroom. And mostly even in the classroom. In the classroom, they were just friends. They were just, their responsibility was to lead the class. Our responsibility was to take the class, but we were all there, of one mind, trying to get shit done. And I'm trying to facilitate an experience that my students are hopefully having with each other. So I want them to just see me as part of the community. I am a leader to them in that space, and I do have to grade them on certain things. I grade my students as little as possible. That's another thing, right? Because again, you don't get graded in the real world. People just know you do excellent work and they want to work with you, or they know you don't do excellent work and they don't. And that has to become more important to you than the grade. So literally, the grading I do for my students is dictated by university mandates. I feel like I have to give them a midterm, they get a graded midterm. I have to give them a final, they do a final project. Both of those things are as practical as they can possibly be. Literally, their midterm is literally a practical test of their ability to follow instructions and use the research platform that they have to use to do their research projects. So it's like, can you use the fucking digital software we've been using all semester? It's the easiest midterm ever if they pay attention. And their final is literally an assessment of their ability to present their final research project. So, we try to make it as practical as we can. But other than that, they just need to show up and do their shit. So yeah, it's a funny question. And when does someone stop being an adult? And I'll flip you with another thing on that gets weird, because people rejuvenalize themselves. Especially I hate to say this, the undereducated. Some of these Trumpleton fucks, that's the problem with them. I hate to say this, they're functionally third graders. A lot of them didn't finish high school. But let's assume they finished high school. Let's assume they finished college. Let's assume they're fucking successful millionaire cowboy businessmen running multi-million-dollar landscaping businesses, and living in mansions, driving souped-up trucks, okay? They're sitting on such weaponized bullshit, right, that, like, we have to prevent them from harming themselves and others. And I'm starting to feel the same way with people in my own family. So let's almost make this a double-ended question. At what point does someone stop being a kid? And then related to that, at what point does someone start being a kid again? Now, certainly at the extreme end, I'm talking about later in life. Yeah, later in life, you're going to start shitting on yourself and probably lose your cognitive functioning, and you're not going to be able to take care of yourself. So that is definitely going to happen at the extreme end for all of us. But even short of that, I think you guys see what I'm saying. Like, when do you become functionally not an adult anymore? Like James said, with some of these anti-vax people and shit, he said, I don't want them to be able to vote. Right? I don't think he's trying to say I hate them. I'm trying to discriminate against them. He's just trying to say, man, if you're that fucked up in the head that we've got to tell you to take your shot and you're refusing to, are you really deserving of this ticket to democracy we call voting, where that vote potentially determines the outcomes of our lives and shit? So these are great questions, gang. And I forgot the avatars.
You ever notice how modern evangelical Protestants think they just have the best religion in the whole wide world?
Stoned. Let's blame it on the reefer.
And of course they think that because everybody thinks their religion is the best, right? It's kind of like your kid or your junk. You could have the absolutely nastiest, ugliest, most useless one that's ever existed, but you'll always think it's the coolest one ever, just because it's yours. So yeah, no great surprise there. But I want to zero in on a big reason why this branch of Christianity thinks it's just so awesomely unique.
I was gonna launch stream avatars, but I got high. I was gonna add some shit to the stream, but I got high. Now everybody's watching Mythvision, and I know why. Because I got high. Because I got high. Because I got high. La, da, da. Y'all like that shit. That's fire. That's a fire remix right there. I was gonna take over the internet, but I got high. I was gonna launch on Rumble too, but I got high. Now there's a theocracy, and I know why. Because I got high. Because I got high. Because I gotta record this shit. This is going
it's
somewhere.
Kind of
y'all don't like it. I like it. It's a hit.
To some extent in its own mind, and to some in reality, by its rejection
I'm a
of
legend
ritual,
in my own mind.
legalism, and all the other dry procedural stuff that makes religion seem obsolete. It's a paradigm shift summed up by the nauseating phrase, "It's not a religion, it's a relationship with God." But while those words make us want to barf every time we hear them, there does seem to be something nice, even profound, at the core of this idea. And that is that instead of expecting you to do stuff, especially pointless ritual like counting rosary beads or pointing a carpet at Mecca,
I would just also like to once again shout out James Apperson, link in the description. Because James always says this about people's God idea. And again, they try to deny this shit, but again, put them alone together or let them, get a chance to counter-apologize or to apologize rather. And the first thing they'll be telling you about is their personal relationship with God.
It says all you have to do is
suggested is a relationship.
Accept Jesus into your heart and have a relationship with him. God offers salvation as a free gift. So if you'll but accept it, you'll join him in heaven forever. It's as simple as that. And of course it would be, because what's the point of a works-based religion when God wants you in his presence if only you'll join him? So Christians dump all religion's baggage, strip the ritual script from their prayers, and say, just approach God like he's your dad. This feels warm and fuzzy because it mimics the best of our relationships and connectedness with other people. But the fact is, it's really not that great, especially when presented.
Also, if Jesus was like my fucking dad, I'd be able to pray to that nigga, and that nigga would be telling me the right card to play in Pinochle every time. Instead, my real dad apparently, with his limited love and ability and blase and the flavonoids, has to show up on Gather with me and fucking You know, we have to have fucking phone calls about strategizing and play out situations together so I understand what to do. And, you know, all of this fucking work that goes in just to showing me what the fucking right card to play is. You know, if Jesus really had fucking fatherly love, I would just be like, and I would just know every time, you know, Jesus would hit me with that fatherly love. I would never lose a game of pinochle in my fucking life. Jesus, you suck at being my
children.
dad.
And I would argue that if anything, works-based religion is a kinder and far better option.
My dad's no miracle worker, but he's got much better pinochle advice.
To get into why, and to show how mimicking human relationships turns Christianity into a stressful cluster, let's look at a few things that we might take for granted about our relationships and communication with other people. First, the mechanics of how you start and maintain at least a basic relationship with another person are pretty straightforward. You can see the person you wish to talk to, and generally, at least in familiar situations with people you know, you can figure out when and how it's appropriate to approach them in conversation. Once you start speaking, there's no question you're talking to them. You know how to direct yourself toward them through positioning, enunciation, and eye contact, and verbal and nonverbal assurances from them make it clear that they recognize and are responding to what you said. There's no question in your mind that you and another person are speaking, and from there, you'll usually experience natural human emotional reactions, starting on a basic level and growing with familiarity, that come from making conversational connections with other humans and being in their presence. And over time, this gives you a sense that you have various forms of relationship with different people. If a relationship ever does start to slip away or become strained, you'll see clear signs of it and be able to follow up for assurances of what's happening one way or the other. And of course, failing to maintain a relationship with another human won't, send you to hell. Now, it's important to understand that, while this set of skills is relatively simple, it still must be learned through repeated early childhood interactions. It's far more instinctive for some children and adults than others, and for some, such as those who are on the spectrum or just slightly socially awkward, it can be harder to grasp the nuance of social interaction and relational connectedness.
Yeah, seriously. Hey, Richard.
If I can be real for a moment, I've struggled with this greatly over the course of my life. And while I've gotten more comfortable in my skin over time, I can present very comfortably in front of 100 people, yet still feel lost and anxious trying to navigate the basics of a meet and greet afterward. That's the way it is for a lot of people. And this is in human conversations, with beings we can see and from whom we get concrete cues to help us navigate our interactions, be assured that the other person connects with us on some level, and get a sense of what kind of relationship is developing. So if kids still need to learn these social skills in real settings with tangible feedback, and if doing so can be awkward, even traumatically so for some of them, let's take a moment to appreciate what Christians are asking their children to do. By telling them to establish a relationship with God, they're expecting them to conjure an idea of the being they need to interact with in their own heads. Of course, this is guided by instruction from the Bible and from adults in their lives, but still the task is on them to distill these stories and abstractions into the idea of a personality, one they must generate and hold in their minds while convincing themselves to feel that it's a real thing that's actually with them. Then they need to start having a relationship with it. But how does a person do this? Well, usually you talk to that person. Great. But how do you talk to a being you're picturing in your head who, while ostensibly everywhere, still has a presence that comes and goes and gets stronger and weaker and must be conjured? And how do you really feel that you're properly directing your conversation to this being? Modern Christians often just speak into the air, or maybe whisper or think their thoughts to God because, he can read your mind and all that. So I guess that teaching can more or less assure you that he'll technically hear the words you're uttering. But still, this idea runs against all your intuition of how you interact with someone else. And training yourself to talk while you're just sitting by yourself without feeling like it's just weird, and to be legitimately convinced that this is a meaningful exercise actually directed towards someone, is a big thing to ask of a kid. And that's before we even approach the hard stuff. How do you hear God talking back? How do you get any feeling of reassurance that He's there with you, hears you, and that there is any form of back and forth communication happening? And how can you feel this feedback so convincingly and so tangibly that it actually becomes an emotional reality for you, and that you thus have the vital relationship with God? This is incredibly challenging even for adults, so imagine how cruelly inaccessible it is for children. All the relational cues and assurances you would pick up from another human must somehow be conjured in your mind, which is why prayer and worship are important to Christians. Prayer puts you into a meditative...
YouTube told me he got me a cleaner version of this one, I think. I need to put that in the board, YouTube Punk.
...state in which you can relax, say reassuring words, and try to generate some kind of euphoric feeling that you can interpret as another presence within your mind. If you're good at this, and a little lucky, you can hear thoughts inside your own head that you start to think aren't your own, thus getting at least the impression of some actual conversation. And worship, of course, is just a crass, obviously manipulative exercise. And
Richard Madsen, I agree. And I gotta be honest with you, James Apperson has made me even more skeptical of online dating, which is terrible because all the time I had my life ruined by people I met online should have made me more skeptical of online dating. But hey. But yeah, the whole endeavor is a little bit weird. But then there's this problem where I don't actually meet people or go out anywhere or interact with other human beings, which means online dating has sort of been the only option I have. So for me, it's pretty much online dating or I have to meet all my partners on YouTube. So we need to figure out a way. I've been trying to grow the international community, guys. I've been focusing on how do we reach out to the international community? Maybe we need to be up later. Maybe we need to do more international content creators we need to network with. I've been wrong about this, y'all. I need to switch up. Everything needs to be focused on local. I need to be focused on how do I get more viewership in mid-Michigan? How do I get more viewers within a 30-minute commute of my house?
Using strategically
and I don't
chosen and
drive.
perform music sets to stir.
Listen, YouTube. YouTube needs to shift its algorithm to geography. I need some help out here, YouTube.
Emotions. So think of what's involved in reliably conjuring feelings using these experiences. Then think of the complex internal thought process needed to reshape these emotions into what you feel naturally when you interact with another person, and to trick yourself into feeling like they are feedback from an imaginary character you're maintaining inside your head. Now consider the fact that this highly abstract, poorly defined task is being expected of kids, some of whom might have a difficult time fully grasping whether they've made connection with, have the approval of, and have established a relationship with a visible person. And this is presented as the most high-stakes task a child needs to accomplish, because a relationship with God is the ultimate goal of Christianity. And that sounds nice, right? Christianity has stripped away the rituals, legalism, and works-based tasks of structured religion and just made it about loving God. But it's not nice. It's horrifyingly, traumatizingly cruel. Because not only are kids admired or shamed based on how well they conjure absurdly complex, abstract thought processes, but depending on the teaching and how it's presented, their relationship with God is the basis of their salvation. So no pressure, kids. But you'll live in eternal bliss or fucking burn in hell based on how well you've gone through these mental contortions. And there's really no marker of whether or not you've succeeded, because not only is it vague, it's internal. It's between you and a non-existent being you're imagining inside your own mind. A scary, lonely place where no adult can enter to help you process the doubts, fears, and questions they set into motion for you. Sure, they can reassure you with platitudes and generalizations, but as any kid who grew up in this environment can tell you, that doesn't really put the fears to rest. It usually starts when you're introduced to a task called accepting Jesus into your heart. It's presented as a simple thing, offered by God in love. But how do you accept it? Sure, you can utter words, but it's presented as an internal thought process, a change of heart. So how do you know that you've really done it? That you really meant it? That it stuck? I struggled with these questions for years, so unable to conceptualize what accepting Jesus into my heart meant, that all I could do was hope to survive until I grew up and could go to another church and find another pastor who could help me figure it out without me getting in trouble when people in my own church discovered I wasn't Christian. And seriously, to illustrate how real this was, one night after accidentally playing outside during a volcanic ashfall, I went to bed resigned to the fact that that night I would die in my sleep and wake up burning. And even after feeling that I had figured out salvation, I remained deeply shamed by the fact that I felt very little, and often nothing other than boredom or discomfort during worship services or long periods of prayer. These were things I was told I should enjoy if I had a relationship with God. But I didn't enjoy them, because they were stupid and f***ing boring exercises that help people with different internal skill sets than me twist their minds into feeling that they were communicating with God. As late as high school, when I was really into being a Christian, I remember staring at a brass knob in chapel, letting my eyes lose focus and trying to feel that I was singing my words to God and that I was hearing or feeling something back. These are horrifying experiences. They create needless, constant anxiety in kids who want to do the right thing, to be good kids, but simply aren't the best at shaping weird concepts in their minds and feeling like they're engaged with God. I, of course, am not alone in having experienced this, and my friend Suris has offered to come by and share how this kind of religious teaching impacted him.
So when it comes to the topic of childhood experiences, I have a few, some not necessarily just pertaining to anxiety about myself, but given that I came from a school that was very much a non-denominational school, but basically practiced what we would consider Southern Baptist teachings, I basically had a crisis of faith anytime I went to another person's church, because they would always have some different variant for how you needed to be saved, and since I was taught the very fire and brimstone version of hell, if I wasn't saved in the right way, it literally meant burning in fire forever. There was even a point in time where I had this thought that I had to pray to absolve myself of all of my sins right before death, otherwise I would carry them with me even if I was saved, and be punished for them. This led to me praying every single time I did so much as utter a swear word under my breath. Not exactly a good compulsive habit, and probably one of the contributing factors to the anxiety I experience today. Speaking of not getting saved properly, any time that I had a friend of mine come to my church, one of the things that I would always hear from them is, wow, I didn't understand that I needed to do that to be saved. And so they would get saved where I was, and I would feel like I would get a lovely little crown whenever I went to heaven, but that led to a bit of a problem. What if it wasn't them that didn't understand how to be saved, and what if it was me? The Bible's incredibly vague about how this works, considering that there really isn't any mechanism for letting Jesus into your heart. This confusion would cause me to have nightmares about dying and going up to the pearly gates, and ultimately finding out that I would be doomed to hellfire. All because I didn't believe the right way, or I didn't get rid of the right number of sins before I died, or any other number of confusing doctrinal problems that I was fed. It becomes especially confusing when you consider that we're told to have a relationship with this Jesus figure, and yet unlike every other relationship that we have in reality, this figure can't speak back or communicate in any discernible way. In fact, after a while, I had taught myself to just open up my Bible to a random passage anytime I had a question, and then try to interpret whatever I put my finger on as the answer to that question. It was a bit like operating the Bible like a solo Ouija board. But when you're told you have to have a relationship with someone who doesn't talk back, and if you don't have that relationship, then you'll burn in hell, you'll do anything in your power to have that relationship, even if certain bits don't make
I think the behaviors described here are perfectly normal. Isn't somebody tell me if you were a Christian and you didn't do this?
Make much sense.
I'm sure many of you have had similar experiences. Some of you might still be processing them, trying to understand what you went through, and maybe it still affects you. Sadly, and this really breaks my heart, helpless young children even today are experiencing performance anxiety and even fear of torture over things they simply don't know how to do and can never know if they've done. This needs to stop. Modern, grace-based Christianity is horrifying, and it torments the minds of kids for no good reason. If you want to present your kid with ancient superstitions and tell them they might be tortured forever, then at least give them practical, tangible steps they can take to be confident it never happens. Go back to works-based religion, where a person can at least know what to do to get to heaven and feel confident that they've done it. Or better yet, give up religion altogether while you're at it. Whatever you do and however you do it, untangle and then end this cruel mind you're putting your kids through.
That's my guy, man. Let's see. Yeah, man. I think a lot of us have experienced that. To me, that is sort of, I don't know, the normal thing. I was saying this even about devotionals, like when I suggested reading the Bible in a year in a Bible study group. You know, there were no takers, but maybe they would have taken it differently if I'd have said it like as a devotional thing, because I think that's what people expect in their devotionals. It's like these like pre-selected scriptures from the Bible, you know, that are the nice bits just to you know, make you feel good for the day or whatever, or to encourage you. Even if it's that like guilt porn, you know, where Christians love to be convicted. But yeah, for those of us, I think, that are developing that relationship where you want to crack open that book on your own, you know, you're not going to read it from beginning to end every time you have an issue. So yeah, you end up opening it to wherever, reading whatever, and then that becomes the message the word God had for you that day. So the whole endeavor to me is totally screwed up. Okay. All right. All right. Also got to do something, little thingy for work. Okay. And okay. Yeah, they got those. All right. So I was just checking here. I'm gonna pull up the manuscript. Before we do, let me see if anybody had anything else to say about that. Oh, also, Melody, you need the @ command when you do the attack. So, you know, when you do, I don't know who's in front of me. Attack. At Richard Madsen, like that, so that the program can do its little strippies or whatever. Nope, my guy's gone the wrong way. There we go. Oh, you attacked me. Okay, good. Boop. See you later. Yeah, I was trying to defend myself with the movement thingy, but I got to figure out the movement. I think they're movement commands on a little virtual controller. All right, let's... all right, yeah, I looked up Inertia. All right, what do we just do? So honestly, guys, I feel like for many Christians, and I think Prophet of Zod undersold this point to a bit, it's almost like Christianity has been stripped down to just the relationship with God, right? You know what I'm talking about? There seems to be so many Christians where that's the beginning, middle, and end of the story, right? And they don't even have to know the Bible anymore. A lot of them don't even have to go to church. A lot of them, and then if they do go to church is just all about reinforcing their personal relationship, everything they talk about, and then how they relate to the entire world is then filtered through their relationship with Jesus. Again, I got grandparents who can't say hello to people. You call them praise the Lord. Why does you shilling for Jesus have to be such a 24/7 song and dance that you can't answer the phone without praising his holy name? I mean, and then that is the thing. So then now you've set up a family dynamic where everyone is established based on their sanctity, right? How sanctified they are. Are you saved, sanctified, and filled with the Holy Ghost? And you can't even say, go fuck yourself. You guys are in a cult. So yeah, the Prophet Azab video really hit on how awful this idea is, especially for the children's. Now, being the amazing co-host that I am, y'all need to remember to check what I'm going to start calling the Black Block, okay? And the Black Block is the Sunday afternoon special, where around 1 p.m. Eastern, you get you get myself and Uncle Bobby, Gin and Truth on YouTube, co-hosting the Blackout, which you need to watch, followed at 3:30 p.m. Eastern by myself and my one black friend hosting Hot Program. So you just turn on your little YouTube machine. I know some of y'all are too fucking lazy to join Discord, too fucking disrespectful of the damn business model and fucking community building fucking extravaganza we got going on here, trying to build up and gather. And you're a bunch of YouTube losers. All right? So you get to turn on your little YouTube machine on Sunday afternoon and just black it up. Just get all the fucking black content creation you can handle. Just Blackfest every Sunday afternoon for church. Redeem yourself of your racial sins. Okay? Because you're bad. You're a terrible white atheist. You're the white devil. You know it. You know it. You need to support black content creators. Yes, I'm trying to exploit white guilt for my own gain. Yes, I'm doing that. Yes, I don't care. You're a terrible white person. I know these community demographics. This atheist YouTube community is primarily white folks. You're awful white people. And you are not sending enough of your money, your time, and your support to black content creators. What do you mean there aren't enough black content creators on YouTube? I just told you about 3 of them. What do you mean most of the atheist YouTubers are white? Yeah, I get that. See, but I'm trying to help you out. And you're not helping me help you out, help you help yourself enough to help me. So go fuck yourself. You're awful. Awful. White devil. You're terrible. No, I didn't freeze. No, I didn't freeze or none of that. No, I'm not worried about the programming. I just wanted you to think about how terrible you are. I wanted to observe a moment of silence so you could think about how much of a shitty white person you are. Now, you must support black content creators with every fucking last breath you have in your racist body. Okay? Were you born white this morning? Congratulations, you're part of the fucking problem. You just woke up inhaling and exhaling white supremacy all day. Just inhale, exhale, white supremacy all the time. All right, now I'm going to take a quick pee break, and you're going to watch my co-host, Uncle Bobby here, and you're just going to think about how much your ass needs to support black atheists from now on. You're not doing enough for the cause, I'm telling you.
All right, gang, let's jump into this. Gang, today just going to be pure meatloaf, right? This is just going to be Uncle Bobby doing a little ranting, kicking some actual factuals. Let's get this little ring light going. I don't even know if this makes a difference. Yeah, I don't care. I just like it. Someone gave it to me. Go fuck yourself. Gang, today's just going to be pure meatloaf, right? I got home and I turned on the election stuff, and it made me think about a conversation at work. I was going to do a video review and all the other stuff and the blase and the glavinoids. But we got to talk about these midterms, gang. We have got to talk about these midterms. Now, as usual, Uncle Bobby's just going to flow. I've got no idea where this is going, but I'm not going to lie. And I guess this is a part of me that's my dad. I feel a disturbance in the force, gang. I really do. I do not feel good about, waking up tomorrow morning and seeing what's going to happen. Did we flip enough seats? Because, again, the last 6 years, again, I've said this probably since season 2, season 3. Gang, there are names that we just should not know. There's one thing about being not good at your job. You can argue the effectiveness of a president all day long, a congressperson, a senator. This is beyond that. This is quite literally hiring a carpenter to deliver a baby. They shouldn't be doing it. Again, there's no reason for Matt Gaetz, Jim Jordan, Marjorie Green. You guys know the laundry list of idiots that we should not be talking about. We just shouldn't. And so, and then you piggyback that off of the Trump presidency, and it gets my underwear all bunched up in my booty hole. And I've said this before, and I had a conversation not too long ago, and me and a friend were talking about how important this election is. Again, I long for the days where I wish I could critique at least one certain part of the political fence about their political performance, but now that's just a real horrible person over there, right? You can't get, what this is like, gang? Yeah, another football analogy. Go fuck yourself. There's one cuss word. You guys count, keep me in check, because I get all kinds of back on topic. Gang, one of the smartest football minds, goddamn, that was good shit. One of the best football minds I ever played for was Bobby Jack Wright. You couldn't argue the dude. He was one of the smartest coaches I ever played for. But Coach Wright was an asshole. He was. His attacks borderline personal. And so by the time, again, you could not checkmate this guy. You just couldn't. When Bobby Jack Wright said, you should have dropped to the hook to curl zone, you could not argue him. You don't want to know why? Because he was right more times than not. Again, by the time it got from here, podcasters just act like you see what I'm doing with my finger. By the time it got from here, gang, to there, his message was so laced with venom. How can I hear drop to the hook to curl zone after you've insulted my mother's sexual appetites? Right? Just all this crap. He was a coach that I threatened to kick his ass. It's like, I can't take any more of this. You know who told me to do that? That lady, my mom. She's like, I'm tired of you calling this house crying. Next time he pushes up on you, you whip his ass. Thank you, Mom. Bag on topic. He was one of the greatest minds I ever played under, but it was hard to listen to what he said because his message was venomous. That's what I'm talking about. And yeah, I'm talking about mainly the Republican side of the fence, gang. I wish I could go back and critique. That's what selfishly, what I miss most when Trump was in the White House. I miss having political discussions because we can never get to the politics because his personality, his humanity was so odious. How can we talk about politics and the actual state of this country when we have to sit here and have a debate on whether did Matt Gaetz or did he not commit the crimes that he's being accused of? When you have people who work for the government but don't know how the damn government works, right? Again, it'd be one thing if it was just a momentary slip up, but when you got the likes of Marjorie Greene and her, I told you that her monkey has that crack commando style video, right? Okay, we're going in. We're going in. We're going to go in because Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, they're not real. They're not, okay, they weren't sworn in. Okay, because you have to swear in on the Christian Bible. So we got the Bible here. We got the Bible, and we're going to see if we're going to put their hands on it. Did no one tell them that it's actually not a requirement? How do you not know this? Right? And same thing with Kevin McCarthy. You guys remember that? Was it Tapper? Right? But he was on the same tip. That Ilhan Omar, but again, I got to write that down for later. And Tapper was like, nope. You actually don't have to swear on the Bible. Remember what McCarthy? I'm pretty sure you do. I did it 3 times. Well, that's because that's what you chose to do because you're a Christian. No, you got to swear on the Bible. Yeah, okay. So I don't know if you know how this works, but you don't have to do that. No, you really do. Before I forget, gang, I want y'all, again, this is what I'm talking about. This is what makes me scared about tomorrow. Please notice how we have spent the last 2
just thinking about tomorrow brings about the cobwebs and the sorrow. Tomorrow, we're fucked. Tomorrow, it's only a day away. Tomorrow, democracy dies. Tomorrow, it's only a day away. I miss my calling. Y'all don't know. Showbiz Pocket. Y'all don't know, bro. I'll be getting busy in the pit. They be like, is that the drummer? Is that the drummer? Yeah, nigga, that's the drummer. You lucky I ain't come for your part. If I came for your part, your little male league game would be over. You lucky I'm busy in the pit.
No, hell no. The last 4-5 years bashing Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar.
We'll
Why?
see.
Because they're Muslims.
We'll see.
Do you know what else
I gotta
is a
do
Muslim?
science shit, but look.
Dr. Oz.
To hit this shit real quick. Mehmet Oz.
Where's the complaints about Dr. Oz's lack of Christian belief? I'll tell you where it is. It's in the irrelevant trash can. You want to know why? Because they don't care. They do not care. Again, this is no longer about right versus wrong. This is no longer about who's can we put in that seat that will serve the most amount of good for the most amount of people. No, it's just screw you, I want to win. That's why we got Herschel Walker. And they said it out loud, gang, in English words that we all can understand.
Herschel who? Why?
One of your party's major platforms is
guys.
no
there's going to be
abortion.
results coming in soon.
None.
Results.
Herschel Walker.
Polls are going to be closing at 8.
90 some odd
Fuckfaces,
percent.
who has voted? You get 100,000 pocket change if you tell me that you voted. I've only given away this once. Well, the rest of you didn't vote? Go vote. What are you doing? No, you're not allowed. Show's over. No more YouTube for you. No more YouTube. Go vote. Bye.
Ready for take ball?
Whoa. Working hard on my stump, what's the problem? I ain't had shit to show, being modest. Now it's grams of the wax for my conscience.
All right. Seriously though, you really do need to go vote. I'm being dramatic, but you know you could take the stream with you. You can take the stream with you. Just seriously, go vote though.
Proof that he's paid for at least one, and now we've got a second one on the books.
Those are going to close. There we go, Matthew. Matthew knows what's up.
And then they straight up said the quiet part out loud. That's how brazen
Let's
they
get
are.
some
They said,
pocket
we don't
change.
even care. We don't even care. We want that seat. So this is what scares me, gang. And then I just think about the Trump presidency, and I see his face on my damn television set. Think about the 4 years of his presidency. And I remember, and funny, no, it's not, because this is the conversation I had this morning at work, but we were about a year into the Trump presidency. And I remember talking to someone at work, and I told her, one of my major complaints is that apparently Trump can do no wrong. That's dangerous. It's kind of like the Bible. Gang, I've been married to a perfect person before, and it blows.
The worst. Oh, my goodness.
If you aren't willing to admit that you're fallible, there's an issue there.
Yes.
And I said, who knew?
Yes.
Who knew?
And would you not know it? Maybe it's because I damn near do approach imperfection myself. That must be it. That must be the thing. But did you guys know I have an uncanny knack of attracting perfect women? Yeah. I know. It seems like I know. It seems like if you got yourself a perfect woman, it would be like a rare, earth-shattering event in your life. And you would realize that person never admits they're wrong, but they're probably perfect and you fucked it up. But would you realize that I have a knack for this? I've done this time and time again. Somehow I keep attracting perfect women who were never wrong about anything ever, at all, ever, never, all the time. Ever, something's always someone else's fault. It just must be my goddamn luck. How did I get to be so lucky to keep attracting such fucking utter perfection? These bitches must be created in the image of God.
That Jesus was going to...
All right, now listen, folks. Let's talk about some of this science so that we can get the fuck up out of here. Look. I got to publish this manuscript. This is the manuscript. Let me summarize what the fuck is going on for you guys so that you understand what's happening. All right, look. What we're going to do is we got to measure adaptation, chance, and history. All right. And we got to see how their influence changes over time. Now, how the fuck do we do this? Listen, it's very simple. We start with multiple populations. They start with a single ancestor. That's this green star. It represents everybody's start. They're isolated. We have 10 of these populations, but in this example, there's 5. They're all isolated in their own population, evolving over time. They're in the same exact environment. In this case, we call it the ancestral environment. For all intents and purposes, we simply refer to it as the old environment because we're evolving ancestors in phase A. So over time, they're evolving, and they're all in their own, you can think of it as their own virtual flask. It's just like the LNCA long-term evolution experiment. The long-term evolution experiment. We start with a single clonal asexual organism. We isolate it, like I said, into 10 populations, but we're showing 5. And over time, they all evolve independently. Now, what happens? Because they start with the same exact organism and they evolve in the same exact environment, right? They have the same, ancestor. They're also in an identical environment. So the only thing that's different in them is their mutational history, stochastic processes like drift, and how that interacts with natural selection. So they all create unique histories from the same exact start. And so at the end, so this is like at the end, what we can do is to measure their evolution. Now, remember, in our system, when we talk about evolution, what I'm talking about is changes in a trait, right? A lot of you guys, you think of evolution as changes in allele frequencies or whatever. No, we're thinking of traits evolving in populations, right? Evolution is change in the population over generations, right? And so over here in B, we're going to see what happens potentially at the end when we compare the ancestors' value, that would be here at the green star, to the derived values at the end of the experiment, that would be these red X's. Now, you could see that they start all the same. In the case of B, if there's no variation among the replicate populations and the grand mean has not changed from the ancestral value, then one would conclude that the trait has not evolved, right? Now imagine, let's just say we measure some trait, let's say it's fitness. Let's say their fitness is 5. If we start with the fitness of 5, at the end, they all still have a fitness as 5. What would happen? Well, it means their fitness has not changed. The trait has not evolved. They don't have a different fitness from their ancestors. The ancestor value and the derived values, look at the little graph. The ancestor values here, the derived values here, they're the same value. They meet in the middle. There's no change. This is what no evolution would look like. It is actually possible for there to be little to no evolution. All right. Then C is what would happen under the influence of chance alone. What happens is, now notice the mean has not changed. Let's say the average is 5. Boom, the average here is about 5. Boom, the average of the ancestor was 5. Remember, the ancestor is really just the 1 point here. All right, so in this case, the mean hasn't changed, the average has not changed, but there's all this variation. Where is this variation coming from? It's the random differences between them. So just by chance, some are a little higher, some are a little lower. On average, the average hasn't changed, but there is chance. See, significant variation among the replicates with no systematic change in the grand mean would indicate the importance of chance effects. All right, so that's what chance is doing. All right, then we have D. D is a significant change in the grand mean without a significant variation among replicates, indicates the importance of adaptation. So here's what happened. In C, we have variation due to chance. In D, we have no variation, but what's happened is they've all moved. Right? They've all gone from, let's say, the ancestral value was 5. Now the derived value is, let's say, 8 or whatever, right? But they've all done the same thing. They've all gone up by 3, right? We would say that's adaptation. Now, how do we know that's adaptation? Well, because remember, they all started with the same ancestor, right? And they're in the same environment. So their history isn't different. And if there isn't the chance, there could be chance variation between them, but we would see that like this. So if we don't see that, then we know that they're all doing what? They're all doing the same change in the same direction to the same point, right? And so we would say that what? They've adapted, they've evolved, they're getting higher fitness systematically. Consistently, repeatedly, the same way from lineage to lineage when they're exposed to the same thing. So that would be adaptation. And then E shows you that you can have both, right? You can have an effect due to adaptation and chance. Here, the grand mean has changed from, let's say, 5 to, let's say, 8, right? You're comparing, again, the ancestral value to the derived value. The ancestral value was all the same. It'd be here. If you actually zoom in on this, I've actually done this little ghost star where you can see that's the ancestral value, so you can compare it easily visually to the derived values. And this shows you that you've gone up, but you still have spread. So this is an effect due to adaptation and chance. I'm literally telling you guys, I'm an evolutionary biologist. When I tell you I study the basics of evolutionary theory, I mean, God damn it, I study the basics of evolutionary theory. Literally, this showing this system allows you to measure the effects of chance effects like mutation and drift, and that type of thing, founders effects, whatever, compared to adaptation. But if you notice, we don't have an effect of history here, right? The 3 essential ingredients of evolution are variation, inheritance, and selection. So variation is what we're measuring with the stochastic effect. That's chance. Selection is the effect of adaptation, but inheritance, we need them to have a different history. So that's what this phase is useful for. They're actually evolving different histories, but they started from the same starting point. So they don't start with unique histories. They evolve unique histories over the course of this experiment. So we cannot measure the effect of having unique histories. So we actually have to perform. So this is the type of experiment that was originally pioneered by my research mentor, Mike Travisano. I'm currently in the Mike Travisano lab at the University of Minnesota, but he pioneered this type of research back in 1995 when he was in the LNCA lab at the university, at Michigan State University, which is where I did my PhD. I don't even know if they were at MSU yet, but we had the same research mentor. So my version of this is this, where you do that same thing, but then you start a second phase. And now in the second phase, you can still measure the effect of adaptation because you can still get changes in the grand mean. You can still measure chance effects because you can measure these replicate differences, but now you get the effect of history. And the reason is because in phase 1, in this, what we call the old environment, you did this. You started with a single ancestor, you isolated them, you evolved them all in the same environment for some period of time. And that's in this case. This gives you unique histories. Now you start the second phase, you take a single ancestor from each one of these lineages and you do it all over again. So this is a much bigger experiment. Now you have one of these experiments nested in each group coming from a particular lineage. So this is really the experimental method that my current research mentor is known for. So basically, the LNCA long-term evolution experiment looks like this, right? It started with a single clone of E. coli. They evolved for now, like, let's say 75,000 generations or whatever the fuck it is, in the same environment. So this is what the LNCA long-term evolution experiment can test. That's what it was designed for, right? What the Travisano method is you take the LNCA long-term design and then you restart it. You consider the original environment, the old environment, then you start phase 2 in a new environment. And then the new environment, you're just restarting the experimental, the same, you're doing the same exact technique, except you're doing many more populations because you're doing a group for every single lineage from the first phase. So you take all of and this is what Mike Travisano did. The LNCA long-term evolution experiment takes place in glucose. So imagine you have these populations, they're evolving in glucose. When he originally did it, it was for like 2,000 generations. So they spent 2,000 generations, because remember, this was back in 1995, so it was it was early in the long-term evolution experiment. So you had these 12 populations, they're evolving for 2,000 generations in glucose, that's the old environment. Then he does a phase 2, which is for 1,000 generations, in this case, half the time of this. For 1,000 generations, he took and evolved 3 populations from each of the original 12 lineages. So in his example, he evolved 36 populations, 3 from each of the 12 lineages from the LNCA line. So it's a pretty simple thing. It's hard to remember. Let's just look at it again. You start with this. You start with a single genotype, literally one organism, one E. coli, one avidian, one whatever your model system is. In this case, it's digital organisms. You start with a single one. They're all isolated. They're in the same exact environment, and they start with the same exact ancestor. They evolve for a period of time. They all evolve a unique history in the old environment. At the end of that, you can measure the influence of adaptation and chance, and you can isolate their effects, but you cannot measure the effect of history because they all started with the same history. You can then, all right, and this is the method of the longest running evolution and experiment in the history of science. So it's an incredibly powerful method. This is a new wrinkle in that came out in 1995 in microbiology, where you can then take a single organism from each of those evolved lineages, and you can start evolution all over again in a new environment for phase 2. Now each one of these evolved lineages serves as a common ancestor to its own group of populations. Why is this important? Because then once again, at the beginning of phase 2, there's no variation between the replicates that evolve in the new environment. So you start it all over again. In the new environment, you now start with a single clonal ancestor in each group. Therefore, each isolated population starts with the same exact ancestor, right? And then evolves in the same exact environment. But evolution is restarting because it's a new environment. You're just taking an individual from this environment, and you're saying, boop, you're going to start evolution in a new environment, but now we're going to pick a group of ancestors. We need a single ancestor for each group. We're going to pick a single colony from each lineage, and that's going to serve as the ancestor for the new guys. All right, new guys, you evolve in the new environment, and then at the end of phase 2 in the new environment, we can do the same thing, which is we can measure the derived values. That would be these X's that evolve at the end of phase 2, and we can compare them to the ancestral values that we got at the beginning of phase 2, right? Remember, their ancestors are these black stars, right? That's the phase 2 ancestors. And all of these phase 2 ancestors, right, they have the same what? They have the same common ancestor from phase 1, right? So you have an isolated, in other words, the history that you're measuring in phase 2, you've evolved de novo experimentally in your lab, right? You started your entire research system with no variation between the populations, none at all, right? This is really powerful. This is like the fucking research method that I did, that doing in these digital organisms, it was cool enough that it earned me a fucking dissertation, right? Because I took Mike Travisano's, 1995 two-phase E. coli experiment, and I did it in digital organisms with a new wrinkle that I'm going to tell you about in a second. So the So that's what's so cool about this is you start with, you just take a single fucking organism, you isolate it in a bunch of populations. In our case, it was 10. You evolve 10 unique ancestral lineages in the old environment. You take a single organism from each of those, and then you start 10 new lineages, and then each of those evolve 10 replicates. And then at the end, you have the effect of adaptation. In other words, you can see shifts in all of them. And then you can also see the effects of chance, and you can also see the effects of history. So here's how we do. Here's the expanded version. So again, you have your ancestral values here, your derived populations here. This is just showing you the initial differences in the ancestral values, right? So up here, you have, these are the black stars, right? These black stars. It's showing you that when you start, let's say again, the trait is fitness. Let's say the average is 5 again, just because it's whatever. It's just a good starting value. Some of them are going to be below that. Some of them are going to be above that. And if you take a line, this is called the isocline, this little dashed line underneath the graph. It's just showing you where you would be if the derived value and the ancestor value were the same, right? That's what the isocline is. Below the isocline, is more towards the ancestor. Above the isocline is towards the derived, right? So here's what the effect of chance would look like, right? Notice that the mean has not changed, right? The average of these, now you have the groups, right? The groups go like this. Each star now has its own group. This is what phase 2 is. So these stars here are the result of phase 1, and then what we're going to do is measure what happens in their replicates at the end of phase 2, right? And so here's what the end looks like. This is all due to chance, right? See, the means have not changed. They still go right along the isocline. But this, just like up here, right? Just like up here, you get spread that's just within the group. So nothing has changed. The mean hasn't changed, but you have this spread due to chance within the group. That's what chance alone looks like. D, similar before, this is just the effect of adaptation. See, adaptation is all of the groups increased in fitness and pretty much by the same amount. And there's also chance in here. So this is what adaptation and chance together looks like. This is what adaptation and chance look like when the effect of history is eliminated. Notice in that these ones, the effect of history is maintained. In other words, groups still sort themselves based on the values of their ancestors. And here, they all improve by the same amount, but they still sort themselves based on the values of their ancestors, right? The groups that started with ancestors with higher values, let's say this group's started with a 2-point advantage. Let's say this group's ancestor was a 7. This one's a 5. This one's a 3. Well, yeah, these guys everybody improved by 2, but now these guys, their average is a 9, whereas these guys have now, their average is just a 5 or whatever, right? So that's what we're talking about. The effect of history is maintained. If you started better, you're still better. Here's what it looks like when the effect of history is eliminated. They all have improved. There's still a little bit of spread within the group due to chance, but now the ones that were worse off have improved by the most. The ones that were the highest have improved by the least. This is what happens if there's an optimal value. This is what happens if there's an optimal value or like a fitness peak, or, it's hard to get beyond a certain point. Then the groups that are closest to that do the least improvement, but there's a lot of pressure on the lineages that are way off that optimum to improve the most. And this is this reminds me of what happens when you when you curve an exam, right? When you curve an exam because, you know, the average, you know, you did these replicate trials, but your grades, there was too many of your students failed, so you had to get everybody up here. And as a result of everybody having to get to this new forced optimum, the students who were doing the best benefit the least from the curve, right? But the students who were doing the worst, man, they've improved like 3 letter grades just to get everybody in this, say, A to B range or whatever. That's probably a terrible example, but I was thinking about curves the other day when grading midterms. I didn't curve my midterm, in case you're curious. I don't curve exams, but fortunately I don't need to. So here's a situation where the effect of history is diminished. This can happen if there's an optimal intermediate value. So you can see, again, they've kind of come to a common range of values irrespective of their history. For some, that was actually an improvement, but for others, it was, or I shouldn't say improvement. For some, that was going up in the value. For some, that was going down. You can imagine a situation where this is size, and it favors an intermediate size. So if they were too big, they've evolved to be smaller. If they were too small, they've evolved to be a bit bigger. Now they've evolved to be within the optimal size range, so to speak, right? And there's still variation within the groups. And so we would say there's still an effective adaptation, right? Because for the most part, their means have changed, but it's changed in different directions such that it's diminished the effect of history. Remember, the effect of history was creating this much spread. Now the spread is much narrower, right? So. And then here's one where history is amplified idiosyncratically. So here's one where some go up, some go down, some don't go up or down. So what happens to them, you can see clear groupings. What happens to them is very much determined by their history, but it's amplified idiosyncratically. So there's a really strong effect of history, but it's unpredictable. You don't know what happens till it happens. So that is that's what's going on in the experimental design. Is by bringing in this second phase, you can now isolate the effects of adaptation, chance, and the unique histories. You can see what effects these groupings have based on the unique histories that evolved in phase 1. So that's the beauty of this design. Now, that's what effectively we call this the Travisano design. This is really pioneered in 1995 by Travisano. What he did was he took the 12 lineages that had been growing for 2,000 generations in glucose. He isolated a single ancestor from each of them. He then evolved 3 replicates from each of those in maltose. He took out the glucose. Instead, he put in maltose. That created a new environment. He then evolved them in maltose and then measured adaptation, chance, and history, and how that contributed to fitness and changes in cell size. So changes in fitness is under strong selection, changes in cell size under weak selection. We'll talk about that later. My wrinkle is that, it's really twofold, which is the power working with the computer. What I did is you're now looking at a version of the same design. Let's start by looking at the blue guys. What you do is you start with a single ancestor in phase 1 in the old environment. You evolve an isolated population. In this case, we're showing 5, but in reality, it was actually 10, right, in the old environment. And then at the end, for phase 2, you go to a new environment where you take a single colony from each of those lineages and you make a group out of that and you evolve it in the new environment. Then at the end of this, you can measure adaptation, chance, and history the same way we did with this. Now, there's two wrinkles here. Number one, we used two different new environments. And by using two different new environments, we get to see how much the adaptation, chance, and history effects depend on the difference between the new and old environment. One new environment is similar to the old environment. The other is very different than the old environment. So now we get to see how much of an effect that environmental change has. The other wrinkle is we don't just use populations, we don't just isolate populations at the end. We don't just isolate ancestors at the end of phase one. We also isolated populations, we also started populations from ancestors isolated at the beginning of phase one or early in phase one and in the middle of phase one. And what that does is when we start them all together at the same time in phase two, we now can measure the difference that the depth of history makes. So we can go here, we can measure adaptation, chance, and history, but now we can say, what was the relative balance of adaptation, chance, and history for the populations that actually had the deep history, that actually spent the entire experiment, in this case 500,000 updates, just to say 65,000 generations. They spent 65,000 generations in the old environment. Boom, how do they do in the new environment? All right, well, what about the guys that only spent, let's say, 10,000 generations in phase one? These are the new guys. They hadn't adapted to the old environment as much. They were just getting started in the old environment when they got transferred. And these guys are in the middle. So we start at 20,000 updates, we do 5 times that, 100,000 updates, we do 5 times that, 500,000 updates. So really, really deep history compared to shallow history and the intermediate one. So we're adding 2 new wrinkles. We're saying, what difference does the footprint of history make? Because think about this. How long you spend in adapting, how long your ancestors spend adapting in their old environment should fucking matter, right? If they were adapting in that old environment for hundreds of thousands of generations or hundreds of thousands of years, then they're gonna be super well adapted to that environment. They're gonna be very, very specialized. But if they've only been in that environment for a little while, then they're not going to be, the history is not as deep. And so their genome might be a lot more flexible. You expect a lot more genomic flexibility with shallow populations than you do with deep populations. So that's the question here. And it would be damn near impossible to do this with an actual living system. Even something as tractable to lab work like E. coli, it would just be too much lab work, and it would take too long to do this. Effectively, the Travisano populations had shallow history, and now you could study that with populations with deep history, but it would be a lot of work. And that's actually what I was going to do. I was going to originally do this experiment in E. coli, but it was a ton of lab work. And then I ran into some contamination issues during my preliminary experiments. And by the time we worked them out, it just was, we realized it was infeasible and it'd be better to do it in Evita, which was always our backup plan anyway. And I'm glad we did because of COVID, right? COVID hit later and it became, a really good stroke of fate that I chose to just specialize in my digital work. Although I did do some lab work with the long-term lines while I was there. Anyway, so that's the first wrinkle is we're measuring the effect of the depth of history. The effect of the impact of spending much more time in a particular environment before you get to evolve to a new environment. And then we're also we're measuring 2 different new environments. In particular, we're trying to understand the effect of the environmental change. Sometimes you transfer into a similar environment. When you transfer to a similar environment, a lot of your adaptations you're going to hang on to. Think about it if you're in the jungle and then, you know, the environment changes because either something crazy happens or you end up somewhere else, right? But it's a different jungle. Well, all your jungle skills are still good. Climbing, avoiding shit on the jungle floor, and avoiding poisonous plants, and figuring out ripe fruit. All of those skills still apply. But if you get plopped into a tundra, man, you need a whole different fucking metabolic rate now. You ain't foraging for shit like that. You know what I mean? Like just your whole coloration and shit is all wrong. Like you see what I'm saying? Like it's such a dramatic shift in the environment that now fundamentally you need a fundamental reworking. And so sometimes when we're doing this work where we're just kind of, you know, looking at what we can look at in the lab in these systems, we've started to really think about this. Hang on, we're evolution and ecology people. We're supposed to be sensitive to environmental effects. Yes, evolution is all about adaptation, chance, and history, and it's really cool that we can isolate those in these systems. Looking for this historical effect is wonderful, but it implies environmental change, which is awesome because, again, we're evolution and ecology people. Changing environments is the name of the game. And even in experimental evolution, when you can have isolated environments that stay the same forever, you still want to model and do experiments that look at changing environments because everybody knows changing environments is the name of the game in evolution. But it really matters the relationship between the environments in which a population is experiencing the change. And it's so difficult, if not impossible, in most systems to actually quantify how different environments are. Like I said, how different is one jungle to another versus one jungle to a frozen tundra. Okay, you know it's a quote-unquote bigger difference going from jungle to a different jungle than from jungle to a tundra. But how do you quantify that difference? One's a bigger difference. Oh, okay, what does that mean? Right? We're not saying this to undermine other people. If you could study a system like that, of course you fucking would. And people have ways of doing so very well, but it's complicated because it's difficult to quantify the overlap or lack thereof between the environments. But in our computational system, this is actually quite easy for us. Because in the system, our environments are simply computational functions that the programs are rewarded for evolving the ability to perform. And so we know, let's say in this environment, we're working with 76 potential resources. We know the distribution of those resources in the environment and we control it. So we create two environments. One environment, the one that's similar, is overlapping. It has all of the resources that are in the old environment plus some new resources. So we know it's more similar because it literally has the same resources. It's like you can think of it as a supplement. What is the change to the environment? The change to the environment is there's some new shit available. So you could think of it as the organisms don't really change environment, but quote unquote the environment changes because there's some new plants that arrive, there's some new fruits available, whatever the fuck, and they can exploit those. The other environment we know is totally different because literally we know none of the same resources are available. We call it the orthogonal environment. It's a night and day different. Up is down. But no, literally, it's just an environment where only the new resources are available and none of the old ones. So those are the two wrinkles I add. We're going to measure this depth of history, and then we're going to do all of this. When we make this transfer, we're going to do all of this phase 2 part in 2 different environments. So we can measure all of this and then measure what it's like going from an old environment to a similar new environment, and then also from an old environment to a very different new environment. And that's the basis of my dissertation work. And of course, follow-up research on the genomic effects and blah, blah, blah we'll get into. But yeah, so that's the overview, and I'll show you the key result. There's a lot of details that we'll, of course, have to read through, but the key result, remember everything I told you was about getting that ability to measure adaptation, chance, and history. This ancestral, you can think of as that spread I showed you, that spread of the stars along the isocline, how much variation was there between the ancestors at the beginning of phase 2. And as you see, it increases, and then you have the 2 new environments, the overlapping environment, the orthogonal new environment. So this is the similar new environment. This is the dissimilar new environment. You can see, and then just like those colors, red means shallow history, green is intermediate history, blue is deep history. And as you see, with the history effect and the ancestral effect, there's more variation in the scores as history increases. So you can think of this as just, the scores get more spread out over time. This is what you'd expect. That holds up to history. And what's really interesting, you can see that the effect of chance always declines with history. So some predictable stuff. The effect of history goes up with history, unsurprisingly, but crucially, the effect of chance goes down with history, right? So what that means is the shallow populations, more of their outcomes of these shallow populations is determined by chance effects and genetic drift. Why? Because it's earlier in their evolution. So those type of random differences make a much bigger difference. Later on, once more of your genome is all baked in, once evolution's really sealed in the flavor, in Uncle Bobby speak, it's harder for those random differences to make as much of an outcome. So that happens, and then the big effect, and we're looking at genome length there. The big effect here was with fitness. Is that what happens is in the overlapping environment, the environment that's similar, you have the strong adaptation effect of history. This is the depth of history having a huge effect on adaptation. There's a much stronger, basically you can think of this as the shallow populations adapt much faster in the similar environment, which is very counterintuitive. But what happens is you can think of it as the deep history populations have basically figured out what they're going to figure out. And now their genomes are set in place. And now all of a sudden there's a lot of brand new resources, but in order to figure out how to exploit any of those new resources, they have to figure out how to integrate those changes into very old machinery. Whereas the new guys who hadn't figured out as much of the old stuff anyway can solve the environment in ways that integrates more of the new resources and old resources together. So as the new guys are sealing in the flavor, they're sealing in the flavor of this new bountiful environment with, oh my God, so many resources, and they're just cooking and rolling super fast. Whereas the guys who had a more extensive history, sort of the old heads, you know, they learn new tricks very slowly. Because every time they learn a new trick, right, they risk breaking something that they really, really need. So that's, again, what we're talking about. That's like that inertia. Because the environment is similar, they've got evolutionary inertia. Seriously. These guys, seriously, this is evolutionary inertia. We're going to write about that. I was trying to figure out what today's contribution was going to be because I needed to get into this, and now it's all coming to me. Today's whole... I could literally rap. I want to rap at 7. I could rap at 7 because I figured out the new context to think about some of this as we go forward is evolutionary inertia. But I'm not even going to do that for the first draft, but I want to write about it in a side note because I want to submit the draft we have, and I don't know if going down this inertia road is worth all the revision effort. But it's an interesting angle to take. I'm gonna write about it. Note to self, right? All right, now the orthogonal. On the other hand, all right, so that's what's cool. The evolutionary inertia and the overlapping environment. But look at this. In the orthogonal environment, where, again, you don't need all that shit. All of that old shit becomes basically junk, right? Because you don't need the same resources. Instead of going from jungle to jungle, when you go from jungle to tundra, now all of a sudden, you just got to get rid of everything. And you don't have to hold on to all of those previous adaptations because they're no longer rewarded by the environment. So now the shallow history populations and the deep history populations evolve in lockstep. And so this really striking effect of history, which this is what you get your dissertation for right here. This is the money shot. Just hear up. Like, this is the money shot. This is what you get your dissertation for right here. If we had just done this in one environment and gotten this effect, this would have been super cool. This would be my dissertation. What made it fucking dope as shit was we threw in that environmental wrinkle because I was thinking about creating an adaptive radiation, which needs to be my next project. I need to set that up in Avita and just run that bitch now that I did this. You now get, boom, that effect disappears. The difference between populations that had only been evolving for 10,000 versus 65,000 generations, I mean, tenfold, just totally disappeared, and they evolve at the same rate. I did not expect this. This was shocking. This was ultra clean of a result. It almost serves as a control for this, which is not what it was intended to be. But that was super cool. And then your chance and history effects are consistent with what you'd expect. The intermediate value was always intermediate. I mean, this was a super, super great result. And then we have a follow-up paper about what's going on with the genomics of all this. But this is literally the money shot right here. This is my my dissertation piece right here. This is what got Jay through the LNCA lab, right? And it's awesome because it's a Travisano thing too, right? It's taking I took my old mentor's technique, my new mentor's technique, threw it into my own system, added a cool wrinkle. But like I told you guys, it's evolutionary theory 101. It's literally the 4 fundamentals of evolution. We always say the 3 key ingredients of evolution are variation, inheritance, and selection. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about chance variation, inheritance, which is history, and selection, which is adaptation. So you're literally talking about the 3 fundamental ingredients of evolution, and we've created this system where we can measure their effect their relative effects in isolation. We have a design that allows us to isolate and measure their effects simultaneously. So we can see, when is adaptation driving the system? When is chance driving the system? When is history driving the system? And how does it change? If you look over here at genome length, it's a different story. In genome length, there is damn near no adaptation. Their genome length, basically, you could think of it as this. Their fitness changes a great deal. Fitness is under strong selection. So for fitness, adaptation is driving selection. Adaptation is driving evolution, rather. Adaptation is the explanation of most of the change that happens. Chance and history are having significant but less serious effects compared to adaptation. Which is an amazing thing here, because one of the other things that's happening here is, because the effect of adaptation goes down so much in this environment, the effect of history goes up. So for the deep guys, the effect of adaptation overlaps the effect of history. So it doesn't really dominate as much. Whereas for the shallow guys, the effect of adaptation is several times the effect of history. So there's another cool shifty thing that happens there. But yeah, in genome length, their genome length doesn't change that much. And so there is no effective adaptation. It's not even really significant. But there are significant effects of chance and history. So that's cool. So that's what I did, and that's what we'll be talking about. I want to give you guys an overlook because I knew I'd have limited time today because I have to teach tomorrow. So I got to stop everything early today. I'm going to stop streaming early. I'm going to start hanging out and gather early so I can game and relax and eat dinner and do all that stuff earlier so I can go to bed earlier so I can get up earlier. All right, so that's what we'll be rocking with. And I think for now, I should call it there, but let's go ahead and I will quickly read the abstract so you guys see what's going on. Remember that we're going to start here. We're going to talk about replaying life's tape. And that's what we were talking about with this design here. When you start with this one common ancestor and you evolve things in the same environment, it's as though you're taking evolution, right? You're starting evolution with a single organism. You're saying, I'm going to start evolution with this single organism, and then in this flask or in this virtual environment, I'm going to watch evolution play out over time. Now, the idea of replaying evolution would be you could do that. Let's say you're going to watch it evolve for a year. So you start with a genotype, you put it in flask, you watch it evolve for a year. You really got to transfer it every day, but let's say you transfer it every day for a year. Then you could do it again for another year. Do it again for a year. So do this for 5 years, right? And then you could compare how it evolved in year 1 versus year 2 versus year 3 versus year 4 versus year 5. Assuming you restart every single time from the same exact common ancestor and you evolve it in the same exact environment, right? What we do, you see phase 1, evolution is replayed to create alternative histories. We do that, except we do year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and year 5 all at the same time. That's the beauty of this design. This is called a parallel replay experiment. And that's the idea, that instead of doing linear replays, start, finish, start, finish, start, finish, start, finish, start, finish. You do them all at the same time. Start 5 times, get 5 finishes. And then you can compare what happened much faster this way. This is the power of the LNCA long-term lines, y'all. That's what he did. That's the beauty of the LNCA long-term line. That's why it became the most powerful evolution experiment in the history of science. He took one single E. coli, he put it in 12 separate flasks, and then he's watched them evolve for 75,000 generations at the same time. It's like replaying evolution 12 times at once. So that's what we do. For part A, you do 10 replay experiments. Then for part B, for phase 2, you do more replay experiments. In my case, we do 10 initial replays. Then in phase 2, we do 10 replays from each of those 10 initial replays, right? So that's 100 replays, literally. 100 replays. Because in phase 2, for me, instead of doing 5, right here I'm showing 5 from each of 5. In reality, this would be twice this big, right? And we would show 10. In reality, we're doing 10 replays from each of 10 different lineages. We do this for more statistical power. And then I do each of that for 3 different time points. So that's actually 300 replays. But then remember, I do that in 2 different new environments. So that's 600 replay experiments. So literally my phase 2 is replaying evolution 600 times. That way we can measure the response of 10 groups of 10 populations with 10 different histories from 3 different time points in 2 different environments. So that's why this experiment is big. So when I say I did this experiment, oh, it's a big experiment, and then I explain it all, don't get it twisted, y'all. And that's the power of me and Cliff talk to you. When we talk y'all about digital evolution, this is the power of it. We can do these experiments where you can do 600 replays, right, of evolution because you're working with the computer. And so here's the title, How the Footprint of History Shapes the Evolution of Digital Organisms, right? Here's the abstract. We're going to read through this before we go so you guys understand what's going on when we pick up tomorrow. Gold's thought experiment of replaying life's tape, there it is, replaying life's tape, provides a conceptual framework for experiments that quantify the contributions of adaptation, chance, and history to evolutionary outcomes. Using this framework, one can measure how varying the depth of history in one environment influences subsequent evolution in a new environment. Can the footprint of history, the genomic legacy of prior adaptation, grow too deep to overcome? Can this legacy constrain adaptation even with intense selection in the new environment? We investigated these questions using digital organisms. Specifically, we evolved 10 populations from one ancestor under identical conditions. We then replayed evolution from 3 time points in each population's history, corresponding to shallow, intermediate, and deep history in 2 new environments, 1 similar and 1 dissimilar to the prior environment. We measured the contributions of adaptation, chance, and history to the among lineage variation in fitness and genome length in both new environments. In both environments, variation in genome length depended largely on history and chance, not adaptation, indicating weak selection. By contrast, adaptation, chance, and history all contributed to variation in fitness. Whether the depth of history affected adaptation depended crucially on the environment. This is like a money sentence right here. When the ancestral and new environments favored overlapping traits, history was as important as adaptation to the fitness achieved in the new environment for the populations with the deepest history. However, when the ancestral and new environments favored different traits, adaptation overwhelmed even deep history. This experimental design for assessing the influence of the depth of history is promising for both biological and digital systems. It means Gold was right sometimes. It literally means he was right sometimes. But But I think overall, he had more of this nuance in his perspective than people think, especially in his later writing. But yeah, this all gets at what he was talking about. And yeah, you definitely see that under a lot of situations, these historical effects are incredibly significant. And on top of that, the chance effects means that, evolution is simply unpredictable. However, you do see powerful evidence of parallel adaptation, right? So that's also one for the selectionist, so to speak. But look, this has been really fun. I think we've covered a lot of ground. I think this manuscript is in pretty good shape. What needs to happen is I kind of need to go over it with a fine-tooth comb, look for any errors, and get them out of here. And then the goal this week is to try to get this cleaned up and ready to submit. To be honest, we've already submitted it, so it is in good shape. And it's mostly just about poring over it to make sure there aren't any minor mistakes. But yeah, it should be pretty good to go. But I will have you guys on board with me as we get ready to submit it, and hope for the best in the review process. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate your support. It means a lot to me to have friends and fans that will hang out and ask great questions and follow along with me when I'm doing my work. This is a really important step in my career, getting my dissertation research published. It's the type of, I need to get this published. I need to get the shape mating thing that we've been working on with Cliff published. These will be absolute pivotal achievements to being able to get a faculty job. So thank you guys so much. Link up with us in Gather. I'm going to let Sam out, and then we will be in Gather. I'm going to play some Pinochle. I was going to, I will play Pinochle and game and stuff on stream a lot. But tonight, I think I'm going to end the stream because I said I'm tired and I have to teach tomorrow. So I don't want to push it. So we're gonna start unwinding early. So I'm gonna let Sam out, but please join us in Gather. I don't think there's any major sport events happening that I know of. Oh crap! Is the World Series on tonight, y'all? Anybody know what's going on? The World Series is over. What am I talking about? All right, so that's done. Yeah. I think we're good. So we're just gonna hang out. I think we'll probably watch Cheers and watch some movies. We can do whatever you guys want to do. Actually, we can do something fun because I'm gonna be up for a while. Yeah, so let's do some Gather shit. We could watch movies. We could put on. I'm sure we'll watch a couple episodes of Cheers. We could watch other shows if you guys have something else people want to check out. We've got HBO Max and Netflix and all types of shit. Also, I want to get I want to resubscribe to UFC Fight Pass. I have ESPN Plus, but I want to go back to UFC Fight Pass because y'all know Uncle Bobby's into the Kajukenpo. Yeah, and he's like an 7th degree black belt, I think, and which is basically street fighting. And so I'm really into mixed martial arts. I think a lot of the higher level skills, like the karate, jiu-jitsu, the submissions, kickboxing and stuff like that is a lot better on Fight Pass. We also I want to end up doing also like a pro wrestling school type vibe because Wayne and I think that's going to be really important to what we're doing with Word Wrestling Entertainment. So those are some things we'll have going on later. But yeah, we're getting all sorts of streaming services in there. We could do whatever the fuck we want. I'm really excited. But yeah, exactly. UFC would be fun with Bobby, but I want to also, help everybody in the audience, up their combat sports game. Feel like we're getting educated and appreciating the culture. So yeah. No, the Gather link and call the show is for guests. If you want the Gather stuff is it's like an invite only thing. You need to hit me up in the Discord to get invited to Gather. So the Discord link is down in the description. Once people join the Discord and we get to know who you are in Discord, then I'll send you out a Gather link and get you set up. But yeah, that's what we'll be. Otherwise, we will be back live tomorrow. And thank you to everybody. I don't know, is anybody else live? I would pass y'all off to James or somebody. I don't know if anybody's live on YouTube or anything right now. Which is kind of weird for me because normally I'm paying attention and I know. The Young Turks live, so maybe I'll put them on for a few minutes. But yeah, appreciate y'all. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll link up with y'all and Gather. Appreciate everybody. If not, I'll see you tomorrow in the name of the Darwin Dawkins and the Christopher Hitchens. Thank you all so much. I really, really appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
Ready for takeoff?
Whoa. Working hard on my stump, what's the problem? I ain't had shit to show, being modest. Now it's grams of the wax for my conscience. Bron James in LA, you're on college. I've been jumping on them planes like a hobby. Still moving with the pack like my partners. Took the John on them jets cause we wildin'. Took the boat at the party on the island, moment of silence. So good, get back to the topic. Grew up, it was me and Flocka. Grandma's and Big T, this my mama. I ain't even for the pain when my pots flip. Knew his name, that's it, never bothered. Mom said, you the man, son, you got this. Ever since I found a way to go and pop shit. Hold up, blaze through a whole zip. Took a seat at the table of my first flip. Days in red roof for my first whip. Spent the money with the gang, never post pics. Seen a change in the game, had to coach it. Never let them take my wangs in the mold, bitch. Ever made in a month, nigga. Used to serve him at the minute, just the front, nigga. Goddamn. Had to grow up quick, I made my own rules. Had my first child, got it jumping with music. Can't really hang with nobody who losing. I thought by now that you would go and get it, but I could hardly see niggas this distant. Know you get cropped if you not in the picture. And I made that tag and went got a bag. Shots to the Henny and OG prescriptions, put rebel shit on the map. Took a leap from where I started at. Started ballin' now, I'm Chris Paul and Cat. Got him steady calling for the mold, but I'm on a roll, gotta call him back. And that's all fact.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. All carry-on items should now be stowed securely, either in an overhead bin or under the seat in front of you. All aisles, exits, and bulkhead areas should now be clear.